here's what we do. Now we are live streaming. Let's see how things hold up. And what I might do is delete the first part. Because usually what happens is it confuses people and they don't show up for the second part.
Well, let me download it first.
Wait.
Yeah, good point.
What do you mean delete? Wait, delete what?
Just something I was considering. Just giving it a thought.
Delete the first part of the episode?
I was considering it because...
Well, let us download it first.
That's crazy, dude. You don't delete the record of all that shit we did. What are you fucking doing?
Yeah.
We were talking about some good
Point well taken. Point well taken.
Yeah.
Point well taken.
Yeah.
The other reason
I didn't show up here for nothing.
Point well taken. Heather Holman says we're on. Well, Heather, jump on with us. I mean, even though I'm going to start in a monologue, we got to wait a little while to make certain that numbers show up.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, so the only reason I said that, Aristides, was because when we have two parts, like I said, people, it divides the audience.
I know.
Yeah, and so
I know what you're saying. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you fucking shake-hand the whole thing.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, no, we won't.
It won't let me download it yet because it's still processing the whole thing through YouTube.
Yeah, so don't worry. Don't worry. I won't do it. All right. We'll just do what we usually do and just leave it up. But certainly with all my episodes, always download them as soon as you find the first opportunity, please, of course. We need to always assume that they're going to be, that something might happen at any given time. So always, as soon as the episode is done, as soon as you find a moment's chance, by all means, download it. Please, Nemo, just to make certain we carry that out. As for Aristides, do me a favor, and that link that Brendan Zogi gave you about the ginseng, show it to me. I'd like to see that. And then let's see, then jump on it and order some for you and some for me as soon as possible, if you could be so kind. Maybe you could try and get that to me before Christmas. Because, like I said, I'm out of some. Yeah.
Okay. We'll get what to you for Christmas?
The ginseng.
You want ginseng?
Yeah. You got a link from Brandon.
Yeah, I'll have to find that.
Yeah. He only sent it to you just last episode, or I think, or the episode before that. By all means, and. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but when when my computer restarted, the motherfuckers had my display showing that I was on Skype, which of course I have it set for invisible, but it went right on display showing that I was on. At any rate, so as soon as I said I was going to start monologue, they cut me offline, and the entire intent is, of course, to discourage me from going on monologue, which I may well be discouraged from if we don't get enough numbers if we don't recover enough numbers. So in that point, the part I would delete would be part 2. So that way.
You got a Twitter account, Aristides?
Do I have a Twitter account?
Yeah, post the link off the stream and Twitter.
Yeah, no, I don't run like a personal Twitter of any kind. Really?
Like even share it with some of your friends in Telegram just to increase the view.
Yeah. I mean,
well, he does share it with his friends. He does share it with his friends.
Yeah, I have shared with friends. Yeah, absolutely.
And so to everyone, let's try and recoup the numbers, recover as many as possible. Then we'll decide whether I jump into monologue. But they definitely did not want me going into monologue tonight. That's for sure. They may yet discourage me from going into monologue. And I think that says quite a bit. When, we'll see. If I go into monologue, you'll see why they wanted me not to go into monologue. And that gives you every reason to share part 2 and to make certain everybody hears part 2. I mean, part 1 is fine, but like I said, if we don't get enough numbers back to make my going into monologue worthwhile, and it could take up to an hour to recoup those numbers, at which time we're on, in a sense, our usual time slot, our arc of narrative, because most of the time it takes us about 4 hours before I get into monologue. So, I mean, at least. So, with this, It's 9:15 here in San Francisco. So it's been 3 hours. And it took, how long did it take for me to get restarted? Because, you know, for those of you who don't know, the moment we go offline, I make every effort to restart. But the internet and the computer are both so slow. Takes forever for the modem to restart. Takes, well, an eternity for the computer to restart. I have no doubt that will change when we start up the new computer. But, you know, I have nightmares about that for all the reasons I've already articulated. In interim, like I said, Heather, since you're up, you're welcome to join us so that we can just talk a little bit until we get numbers back, and decide, you know, if we know to get those numbers back, again, just so people jumping on will hear this, if we don't get the numbers back where I feel it's worthwhile, then I'll just not do the monologue. I just will cut off part 2. I will delete part 2. But let's hang out for a while, see how it evolves.
Come on! Don't delete it. They can sit here and listen to this. It's an explanation of what happened. So.
Yeah.
What's with this
okay.
like obsession with deleting things all of a sudden? Like, don't they do that enough to you? Like, you don't have to do it to yourself.
Believe me, your point's well taken again. It's just, put it this way. I mean,
free airtime, man. It's free real estate, as the meme goes. Like,
I guess I'm thinking more that if we don't say much, well, what I'm saying is if we don't say much in the next hour, then
just leave it up there. What the fuck's the harm?
It just kind of eats space,
or do you think enough people like it? You think it means enough people don't look at the first one? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, because it might happen. Yeah. Anyhow, it says part 2, and usually part 2 does poorer than part 1. Sometimes that's not the case, but hopefully that's not the case this time. What we'll do is I'll try and get into the mood, just launch that, and just hope enough people listen to the recording. You know, that's all we can hope for. But we'll see. Give it about, you know, like I said, we'll spend at least, at the absolute longest, we'll spend an hour trying to get the numbers back up. They're increasing pretty good right now, but I'd like to see double what we got before I dive into monologue. So let's see if we can, you know, accomplish that. And so everybody reach out, tell everybody we're back up. It feels like, let's take a look at our live stream from last time before this one uploaded. Last time was 2 hours, and so basically 2 hours 26 minutes, and it cut off about so we did nearly, it took me half an hour, 45 minutes, right? Actually, yeah, it took 45 minutes to get back on, because once I got back into contact with Aristides and Nemo, then we had to, you know, just wait till I got back into the mood to even start the live stream again. Before I even pressed the button on the OBS, I had to restructure the title, for instance, to say part 2, Dietrich, 233rd Bill of Rights Day, Code Orange. That reminds me. You just heard a belch. That was not me. Now, in our, no worries. Yeah. In our latest episode before tonight's, our last episode before tonight's episode. So not part 1 of this episode, but the episode that was our midweek Wednesday episode. Our midweek episode that was transmitted, which I hosted on Wednesday of last week. There's this horrible sound while I'm talking to Heather Holman that sounds like somebody's ripping a fart. Now, I presume most people would not think it was Heather Holman or myself, because we were both speaking simultaneous to that happening. And most people don't fart while they talk. It's usually because you're too busy sucking in air to be...
Okay, I kind of belch, but I'm not going to... I wouldn't do that part.
No, it wasn't your fault. Last time it was Brendan. Right. So I just want people to know, Brendan Zoget said, come on, I explained to them that he was ripping a key out of something, or ripping an earphone out. He was doing something, is what he says caused that horrible sound. He said he was going to come on tonight and cop to it. because of course the only reason I didn't address it then by saying what I usually do is that was not me. I usually jump on that right away. But at the moment that it happened, at the time I felt, look, no one's going to think it's me or Heather because we're talking, but you never know with people, and I wouldn't want people to think it was me, to even think it was me. So it's definitely something that, maybe that's why Brendan didn't show up tonight, so he wouldn't have to cop to that. Then again, he claims it wasn't passing gas. He claims he was doing something that made that horrible sound, but he was going to explain to people what it was, which sounded like something technical. He had an answer for it right away, so I believe what he said was probably true, but nevertheless, it's, it makes it all the more tragic he didn't show up tonight. Just like it's tragic Aaron didn't show up tonight when, I spoke to him last time and he had so many insights that we shared together. And then, usually that's when he doesn't show up the next time, just the way things work out. Okay, well, all such being said, hold on, let me suck some tea here. And, okay, now that that's gotten out of the way, let me open up this. Oh, yes. Oh, for God's sakes, do the blurb. Please.
There's Aristides.
Really? Do the blurb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hit the upvote, the subscribe button, the notification bell, and if you're really ambitious, go in your account settings, make sub channels, and upvote with them also to get multiple upvotes. So that's the no frills version.
What?
That was the no frills version. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thumbs up because they're secret thumbs down. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and maybe make sub channels for more thumbs up. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Nemo, will you also say your blurb?
Oh, yeah.
If you'd be so. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Nemo
please
has an awesome blurb.
Well, I don't know if I'll be able to say it exactly the way I did before because I haven't written it down. But anyway.
Oh, what we can do, just to remind both of you gentlemen, replay when Nemo said it on part 1 later in your own spare time and transcribe it. Okay? Yeah. But go on, Nemo, with what you do remember. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Please invest in buying portable hard drives for you to download and archive Douglas Dietrich's content, download as much of it as possible, then re-upload it on numerous media platforms such as Odyssey, Rumble, BitChute, Dailymotion, and also share the links of the live stream on social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook and all that. And also share it with your friends as well if you see them online. Increase the viewership. The more of this exposure gets out to the public, the higher the chance of Douglas Dietrich gaining secular power and establishing the Fourth Reich, because he's a great problem solver, and if he's in a position of power to become a leader, then it'll help Western civilization get through all this shit that we're stuck with. Overcome it all.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Yeah. By the way, to both of you gentlemen, I noticed that Nemo on his entry of comments under part 1 said, stream got cut off. Sorry. It's good to inform people the stream got cut off.
Yeah, I know. I should have said, stay tuned for next stream.
Oh, no, that's fine too. No need to apologize because, first off, it's the enemy that did it. So let's get this straight. What you should say is something like, stream got cut off, fuck the bastards, just to see who's going to go in a monologue.
Well, sorry to the listeners.
Understood. No, I get it. And you're just, you're acting very civilized, and that's to be commended. It's just, feel free to edit that. You can edit that. So you can say sorry to the listeners and then say, the bastards must really not want him to say what he's going to say tonight. That's one thing we can all conclude. We're almost at some numbers where I feel I might as well start, diving into monologue.
Might as well start, it'll grow.
And then hopefully it'll grow as I go on, and hopefully people will listen to the recording. So, okay, let's do that. At any rate, my love to both these gentlemen who made this possible. honestly, without such men, I might get discouraged. And really, they're both wonderful, beautiful people. And all the people who are not with us, who are so wonderful and beautiful. T. Tank Barry, John Henry Warrington, remind me to stop saying the McMills or the Mills, because I believe he said before to me privately he's not even sure that's actually a part of his name. He integrated it because he felt it might be the name of a relation, but yeah, we might as well just call him John Henry Warrington, so just remind me about that. Other than that, his case with his brother who killed both their parents is still ongoing and progressing, and hopefully we'll hear more about that.
And he got fucked out of inheritance too, right?
Yes, he did. It's so awful. Nemo says, team, okay, great. So you're entering that into the, here just to show me? Because you're also entering that underneath the episode, right? Last episode?
Yeah, I was just showing you what I changed it to.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, thank you. I'm just right now messing with my eyeball, trying to figure out if there's another eyelash went into my eye or whether a vein burst, which happens every once in a while. Brooke Gibson gets so terrified by that. She gets like, sometimes, I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this. Most people do at one point in their lives, or twice or so. But with some people it's fairly common, where a vein will burst in your eye and your eye gets all blood red in the sclera. You know, I think they call it that, sclera or sclera.
Right.
And so when that happens to Brooke, she feels really bad about it or nervous about it. It frightens her because she feels it's her high blood pressure. And, you know, I told her, look, you know, when they tipped my blood pressure over at the, when I went for my immunobooster shot just last week, it was like, fuck, what was it? It was the week before last. No, it was Tuesday I took the shot. So that was last week. So the week before last is when they took it. And it was like 90 over 60. And she was like, of course, oh, I wish my blood pressure was like that. But I was explaining to her, well, I still get that happening to my eye, where every once in a while a vein will burst and a sclera will. Yeah, Heather says, I don't think you're on YouTube. Well, okay, guys.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any live stream on YouTube at all.
He's on live stream. It's active right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not finding it.
It's got 15 people watching it right now. But how did you said it's on? Why did you say it's on?
Well, no, I don't see that it's on. I just see the oh, now I see it. Okay.
But you had to see it because you entered a comment into the chat.
Yeah, I was in the chat, but I didn't see it on YouTube.
What? How do you get into the chat when you don't see it?
At first when I said you're on, and then I couldn't find it after that. It was gone after that.
Okay, so it kind of like disappeared for you.
Just
after
a glitch.
That's Heather Holman's world. Yes, well they do that to her. They fuck with her. That's yeah. Well, hey,
you got 19 watching now. Fuck yeah, it's growing.
Yes, it's growing. Yeah, and so yeah. At any rate, Heather, while we gather a few more people before I dive into it, a status report, please. Give us a situational update. How are you?
There's nothing new going on with me.
Uh-huh.
The drones in the sky are really keeping my attention. All that stuff that people are seeing in the sky, because I'm, seeing stuff too.
What are you seeing?
Well, it just looks like a planet or a star that's really close.
Okay.
And it doesn't move or anything.
Yeah, they tend to do that. Look like they don't move, just stay still in the sky.
Oh, that's so cute.
It's really bright.
That's so adorable.
It's probably Venus.
Maybe.
So you like, all right, that's cool. And you've heard about all these mystery drones in New Jersey, right, darling?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Nemo.
I don't. I actually think I've heard that it's part of Blue Beam. I've heard that they're not of this planet, which I highly doubt because they have red and green lights.
You act as if you've seen them. Was this on video or?
Oh yeah, I've seen them on the videos.
Okay. By the way, Nemo was asking.
Blue beam's just the psyops for the conspiracy toads to get lost in.
Yeah.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah. I mean,
there's been some drones around here, but there's always drones around here.
Right. But by the way, just for what it's worth, all of these programs generally, when the names are like not something hyper unusual that appears only once and you never hear it again, like something really stupid or something really outlandish or lurid sounding, that might be fictitious. But when it comes to when you hear a name over and over again, like Blue Beam, it tends to be real in the sense that it's has some kind of historical basis. I can assure you,
Yeah.
Blue Beam has historical basis, but the fucktards on the internet take it, anywhere they want. I mean, it's like taffy. Once it's on the internet, it's like taffy. Everybody pulls it in a different direction until it snaps. Yeah.
And it hasn't even presented itself, so I don't know how it could have like any kind of a reputation.
Yeah, thank you. Numbers are going up, like Nemo says, and that's cool. He's seeing these things even quicker than I am. But when it comes to Blue Beam, no, there is a serious project. Blue Beam, it has something to do, as far as I understand it, with at some point when they feel it is opportune, they will basically project holograms and try to fool the public into thinking something apocalyptic.
Fighting an alien invasion attack.
Something of that nature, yes. That
could be what this is with the drones.
Well, if so, they're fucking it up. I mean, it's
fucking drones.
Yeah, everybody sees it's drones. I mean, like you yourself said, Heather, it's like you can see they're fucking drones. So it's like nobody's gonna buy it if they tried to say this is a precursor to an alien invasion. If anything, it would be more of a precursor to Red Dawn or some kind of foreign invasion, which I would. I never expect to happen. A foreign invasion, the Americans, of course, the closest they have to it is what they keep fantasizing about with illegal immigration. Amy, I love her dearly. And Amy, if you're listening to this, feel free to jump on and roundtable with us for a few minutes. But honestly, when Amy was like saying, they're coming over the border, and she's near Canada. Okay, there's a lot of illegal immigrants that come through Canada. This is true. She made it sound like Tokyo and her were listening to Fox News all night or all day or something, and she made it sound like they were coming over in droves, like there were waves of them. And you can hear that episode which she's on, which I think she was on 2 or 3 episodes ago. And I said, do you see them? And she said, no. She does, however, point out there's all kinds. The city is, I wouldn't say these are conflicting messages from her, but this is the image that we get, is that the city, which is like Burlington, I think, for her, Burlington, Vermont, the city is apparently empty and full of tent people at the same time, which is not necessarily a contradiction. There's areas of San Francisco that are completely devoid. The businesses have died. No one can afford the real estate. And yet, so everybody's been driven out of business and nobody can afford to reopen those sections of the city. And yet they're full of homeless people, tent cities in effect. So I believe what she's describing is something similar to that in Burlington, Vermont. But I asked her, are they foreigners? And she said, no. So I think she's under the impression due to media that all these people are coming over the border. That's, like she herself said, she's not seeing it. By the way, what Brooke Gibson is worried about, so let us all pray about this and keep her in our thoughts. She's worried that her crazy crack squirrel, the one she rescued from a serpent, well, snake, that was acting like a boa constrictor and squeezing it, which, you know, I believe her. There's snakes that do that. And she, of course, flung all caution to the wind. But just so everybody knows, if you see a snake coiling around a small animal, I'm not encouraging you to do what she did at all. But just for the sake of academic education, snakes that coil like that to crush their victims are almost certainly not poisonous. Because a venomous snake doesn't need to do that. A venomous snake just fucking bites.
Yep.
Then the creature dies. Then they can eat you. They don't need to do the coiling shit. So the coiling snakes tend to be non-poisonous. You don't want to fuck with them depending on size, but the poisonous snakes, at any rate, you know, she would have found the squirrel dead had it been a poisonous snake, because the poisonous snake just would have bit it. But such being said, she found the snake being coiled to death, so she rescued it. Then it's been suffering PTSD ever since and always hides until it comes out of the closet all wild-eyed, thinking she's the snake, and then goes into a frenzy around the room. But it apparently calms down enough where it tries to bop and fuck the female squirrel. So she calls the male squirrel Larry, after crazy meth head that that it did its best to destroy her life. And she's afraid it has impregnated the girl squirrel. And she's afraid because the girl squirrel seems to be getting fatter. And she's afraid because sometimes, or maybe it's fairly common, female squirrels will die during childbirth. Because, you know, their bodies are so small and they give birth to litters. Then she'll be stuck with all kinds of baby squirrels to take care of. And then her whole life will be consumed by that. Let's pray that doesn't happen. Pray for a miracle abortion of the female squirrel. That,
She'll just eat the babies, I guess, when it gives birth.
She would hate you for saying that. Oh my God. It's my.
Mother animals will usually do that, just eat their babies if they don't feel like they want to raise them. You fucked me. Yeah. I wasn't saying Brooke should eat them. I meant the mother squirrel.
No, I get it. Generally, I don't think mammals generally do that. Mammals can be pretty fucked up, though. I mean, they kill their babies. A lot of mammals kill their babies, but they don't generally, to my knowledge, eat them, I don't think. But insects will. A lot of other species will, no problem. But when it comes to, by the way, David Reed there was some other guy named White. What was the last guy who was on, just before they cut me offline? He came on and said hi to everybody just before they cut us off.
I didn't say that.
Oh, he probably doesn't have anything to do with being cut off, but he was almost like a precursor. So let's take a look and see if he got published with that shit's probably not even showing yet. It takes a while for the chat to show up on publication. But at any rate, his name was something, and we'll find out later if it uploads. The guy on now, David Reed, says, "Good morning from New Jersey, home of the drones." So, not quite sure I want to encourage that kind of talk. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want this to simply become like a magnet zone for people to come into the chat and start talking like that. But
I think David Reed's a casual listener.
I'm sure he is. So we'll certainly we'll tolerate.
Like he knows your story, like son of Adolf Hitler.
Cool. Okay, and that's fine. Have you spoken with him before in other venues or something like that?
Well, I've seen that name before in the previous chats.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't remember them all. So, at any rate, so I will get on the subject of the drones in monologue inescapably, okay, we're getting back up to good numbers. So we're 21. So a few more minutes, and I'll just dive right into it, and hold it for as long as I can. theoretically, remember, to everyone listening, theoretically, I could go on for 12 hours now that we've got another fucking loop of video permitted by YouTube or my online broadcasting software. Where obviously I don't intend to do that. I'll go on for...
Depends how much energy you go.
Well, I'm feeling better than I did, but you know, we'll see how long it can last. It could be just the wear and tear on my voice, where if I start, how would I say it, slurring, not in the drunken sense or in the sense that I've had a stroke, but if I start doing what I was doing while I was trying to wake up, which was just like you know, saying things dyslexically and shit, then I'll probably just stop for the sake of avoiding embarrassing myself.
Happens to a lot of us, especially nowadays.
Yes. But I'll go for probably. I could conceivably go tonight for a while. There's just so fucking much to talk about. There's too much. So right now I'm just trying to get my shit together. I'd say I think that if I think about it, it could probably go easily around 8-9 hours, which we have the time now where we could do that. So we'll get started in a moment. I'm gonna breathe, decide whether or not I want to take one last trip to the restroom, just to make certain that I don't interrupt myself later during monologue. But I think that okay, we'll go for it in a minute. Give me a second here, breathing. And Heather, before I dive into it, Nemo asked you a question. I don't think you heard it. He asked if anything else has emerged from your body recently. You know, mechanical.
Oh, no. No, but where they took my tooth out, there is developing like a cankered sore.
Ooh, sorry to hear that. Oh.
Yeah.
When did they take your tooth out?
In 2015.
Why would that happen now?
I don't know.
I know you take good care of your teeth in general.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I go to the dentist, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Rinse your mouth out with warm salt water and and rinse your mouth with oil, like coconut oil or olive oil, for 15 to 20 minutes. Swirl it around your mouth.
I'll do
And
that.
just make sure you spit it out when you're done.
Yeah.
The salt will kill amoebas in your teeth.
Yeah, well, no, there's no tooth there.
Well, what I meant, like, just
In your
overall
mouth.
in your mouth, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the
With a
sore,
sore in.
cleanse the sore with it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
We might be offline again. I just entered an acronym online.
No, you're still going.
Still going? Okay. Okay. Interesting. Whoa, that was weird.
Yeah.
I'm like I was just checking up on something, the GSA, only there were periods in the acronym, and that took me to a like I guess you'd have to see it. It was pretty alarming. It was like one of those dead sites where that's like I don't know if it'll do it again if I do that. G.S.A. And let's see what it does. There we are. It was the, we're having trouble finding that site. We can't connect to the server at GSA, which I usually get shit like that when I'm offline. Why G.S.A. would give me that. That, by the way, is the General Services Administration that I was just looking up to source something before I dove into tonight. At any rate, I'll dive into monologue. Let's look at the live stream once again.
Your listeners are good.
Good, yeah. And David Reed says, no, I'm a long-time listener. I have two names. Thanks to PM. Thanks to Peter Moon. Oh, cool. Oh, that's funny. So I guess good does come out of evil. Yeah, Peter Moon at least brought some positive to us. We'll assume some other people. I noticed that that other lady was back. I'd have to look for her. She entered a comment on one of our latest episodes, and she was the one that Peter Moon thought was siding with him or praising him or defending him or something. And he left her comments up while getting mine deleted back when him and his new, as he refers to him, my new secret friend, Richard K. Cole Jr. We all know who the fuck it is because he regurgitates the same pablum. He and Richard K. Cole Jr. were voting my comments down so they'd get deleted because you put enough downvotes, they'll get deleted. And, you know, because my case with YouTube is under such serious watch thanks to pig fuckers like Ian West, it basically was getting taken down, all of my comments, because they just kept thumbing them down. At any rate, she came back and was leaving a positive comment. So, you know, the people have come back to me who, you know, might have been brought on by Peter Moon. Or, so, you know, whoever listened to me would not be anyone interested in that Radu Cinema shit. Meanwhile, in his own world, where he was publishing his little newsletter and on his Facebook timeline, that's all anyone has ever asked him ever since he started working with me for the past 2 to 4 years. Is when's the next Radu Cinema book coming out? Because, you know, what he did was, as I said, and understand the quantum mechanics behind this. For those of you who choose not to believe in magic, that's fine. Understand it as applied quantum mechanics. But the way he was applying quantum mechanics was through his belief in magic. And basically, if you think that somehow this turns you off with, like, these are incompatible subjects, think about Madame Levue. Madame Levue in New Orleans, she was the, for her time, considered the $1 million a hit assassin. When people would contract her to kill someone, she cast a spell, and that person was guaranteed to die. And she had a 100% hit ratio. So she became the world's first publicly known $1 million a hit assassin. And they could never prosecute her because magic's not recognized in courts of law. Now, scientists have investigated Madame Laveau, and everything I said is true. She is someone who was a $1 million a hit assassin. She had a 100% kill ratio. She was never prosecuted in a court of law because the law refuses to acknowledge the existence of magic. So if you choose not to acknowledge the existence of magic, what was it? Well, scientists investigated the subject. Well, she's dead now herself, but they investigated how is this possible. And they concluded quantum mechanics, applied quantum mechanics. She was working intuitively with the application of applied quantum mechanics by simply reaching into a potential timeline. Say, for instance, you refuse to believe, which I prefer not to believe, in parallel realities. If there are parallel realities, it deeply complicates reality itself. So it's simply easier to, you know, in my case, I would prefer that there not be multiple realities. That doesn't mean there aren't. But
she would have just been conjuring up fucking powerful devils to do the work for him.
Well, then
probably
you're reverting to a magical thought process, which is fine by me. You remember, I don't have problems with a magical thought process because I've seen it in action, but most people have not, and most people are educated to be biased against it. David Reed, by the way, said they still worship Harumba, referring to Madame Levue. But the men who have investigated Madame Levue, her performance, what they concluded as quantum scientists, as physicists, was that she was reaching, if you don't believe in parallel realities, you could accept it either way. Theoretically, some would suggest she was reaching into parallel universes where the person who was the target was not alive, and dragging that reality, or a fragment, an aspect of that reality, into our universe to render her target in the same condition as the person in the parallel timeline. Or, if you do not accept parallel timelines, they also suggested that there is a singular timeline and the past is certain, but the future is infinite. The future branches into infinite potentials. So she's reaching into one of those potentials where the individual is dead. And there are a million or an infinite number of potential lifelines in the future in which any one of us is dead. And she just reached into any one of those, which is not that difficult when you think about it. There are far, far, far more futures in which we're dead than futures in which we're alive. Because any one of us could die at any minute for any reason. So she's just reaching into a potential future where that's a reality, and then bringing it to the present, dragging it back and realizing it. Now, of course, this is easy to say, and your question would be, how the fuck did she do that? Because the scientists who are studying this and presenting that scenario can't do it. Well, a lot of it has to do with intuitive abilities and really the application of ritual. She is applying the ritual, as David Reed says, with the help of Baron Samedi, which is how a voodooist would perceive it. She is calling on Baron Samedi, who is the voodoo god of death, and asking him to, make this person die. It's that simple to her, but via her ritual, her communication with Baron Samedi, a scientist would perceive it as that's her way of personifying a paraphysical, a metaphysical, a quantaphysical force, quantum mechanical force, and that she is intuitively doing something that the modern scientist cannot do intellectually yet. But if we work enough with quantum computing, this is one of the potentials of quantum computing, which is why it's so important to talk about quantum computing in depth at some point. If we work with quantum computing, then we could possibly start calculating people's death potentials to the point where we could make them die, Madame Laveau style, using a quantum computer. So there we have that. And so many things to look forward to, right? Yeah.
Sounds like knowledge that should not be allowed to be exposed to the public.
Well, they've been playing with it at the Department of Defense forever. And you might ask, why don't they just do that to you, Douglas? Well, I have the Vox Arca. See, that's, again, this is where we come into counterpoints for the crap people try to pull. What they do, quite successly, is they kill my internet connection. So, hey, if they can't kill one thing, it's another. What I'm going to do in a few minutes, probably take a short break, make certain that I do one last bathroom trip before diving into the night wholesale and proceeding to suck all the oxygen out of the room. We've got 250 people now, and these are excellent numbers. And I just want to make sure I last throughout the night. And once I get into it, I'm into it. I'm in the Fugé, the trance-like state. Then, I'm here for the rest of the night. But I'll take this little break first. So let's call on Aristides, Heather, and Nemo to speak
Heather's
for
offline.
me. Yeah. Oh, Heather's offline already?
Okay.
Okay, so
Well,
Aristides.
if you need a break, I can do a break for you.
Mm-hmm. It'll be short. But like I said, you could give people a hint of quantum computing being important. As a matter of fact, what I could do is send you just a little blurb here that I think would do better justice than what I sent you last time in terms of just an intro to the subject. So let me put that in your in the voicemail. I mean, the messages we've got going here, the text box. Let me put that in the text box here. Here we go. Now let me cut and paste this, and we'll put this right here into the text box where both of you gentlemen can see this. And we love you, Heather. Thank you for joining us while you did. There you go. Is that legible, both of you guys?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, good.
Let me see.
How about with you, Aristides? Here we are.
Okay. Yeah, I see a text here.
Okay, excellent. And with all that, of course, while I'm gone, also just remind everybody to hit the upvotes, please. Thank you. Got a lot of people, but not many upvotes, so I have to suspect many of our listeners are NSA and other alphabet agencies from various parts of the world. So otherwise, hit those upvotes. Aristides and Nemo will remind you of that. I'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, go on mute.
All right. All right. You there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we reading this or what?
Okay. Did he send it to you too?
Well,
I feel like
it's
I'm like a couple times lately. I'm like kind of losing my voice late at night. I'm like a little hoarse. If you feel like you got a good reading voice, like go ahead.
Well, I don't know anything about this stuff, but
Yeah, I mean you can just read it off though.
all
Or I
right.
could try. Or I could try. What do you want to do?
I'll let you do it first.
Okay. I think it's regarding quantum computing. A calculation faster than the universe's lifetime. While radical quantum computing theory could lead to more powerful machines than previously imagined, quantum computers are already here, and Google's new quantum computer chip is a game changer. Quantum computing milestone already smashed the entanglement world record. Okay, that's great, but what does that mean? Google's new quantum Willow chip has solved a problem the best supercomputer could have taken a quadrillion times the age of the universe. So it's like seems like there's certain problems you could feed them that they solve like faster than any supercomputer by like orders of magnitude, right? So like in some cases, immense like unimaginable like computing power. Imagine unlimited like computing power. But how do you know how to use it? Like who's writing programs that can utilize that to like for something effective, you know?
Definitely not me.
Yeah, right. Just because you got a fucking kabillion fucking calculations per second, like, okay, like what code is like using that efficiently, right? That's the real question. So let me see. I'm gonna try going. This week, Google unveiled the quantum chip that may change computing forever. The Willow chip, 105 qubit, Q-U-B-I-T, qubit processor. It's like the size of the processor. Not only flexes unprecedented power, claims all quantum computing, the longest standing weaknesses, reliability. Okay, more reliable. So apparently there's like a reliability aspect to the quantum computers too, more so than established computers. So 1,000 times faster, but 1 in 10 chance it might fucking fail, right?
Right. A lot of things are prone to fail these days.
Yeah, but like a regular computer is not like a 1 in 10 chance of failure. Like it shouldn't be. It's like if you buy like a Dell computer, like you expect it to work, not 90% of the time, but like 100% of the time. You know,
that's what they want you to think.
Yeah, well, right. Okay, in reality, it's like 98, you know, or something. But you know, but a quantum computer, if that's like 90, you know, it's like there's a trade-off between reliability, it seems. So. All right, they're theorizing how to connect quantum processors over vast distances, form a giant quantum computing network that acts as a single machine, which you could, because with quantum stuff, you can communicate instantaneously across space. So you could have two particles that are quantum entangled, and if they're on opposite sides of the universe, one of them flips, the other one flips, even if it's like, you know, 15 billion light years in between them, they still know instantly. So
I'll read the rest.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, quantum computers will one day outpace the fastest supercomputers on the planet. But why do we need them all, and what will they be used to accomplish? In theory, quantum computers could solve problems beyond the most powerful classical computers, but such device will need to become much larger and more reliable first.
Yeah. Okay, I'm back. So that was nice. What made you decide to read Nemo? Which is fine. I mean, it's fine that you are.
He was just skimming through half of it. I'm like, let me read it.
Oh, I see.
No, but I mean, it's a little. I was trying to like kind of paraphrase a little because it does get a little, monotonous. I was just trying to be like a little more get to the point.
Got it. No, that's fine. But I could understand. Yeah, no, both approaches.
Rather than like just mechanically like reading it off, I was just kind of like I like to try to like kind of analyze what I'm talking about. Like, oh, this basically means this or that. Like,
No, definitely, I get it, and that's by the way, that's professional in its own right. Many professionals would do that. Yeah.
Where are we?
Yeah.
1, 2.
So
we read the first like 3 paragraphs. So
okay.
You want to start?
No, that's fine. But at any rate, I'll dive into monologue now, and so with everyone, I want to thank you so much for what you're doing, and was able to ascertain that. I had another eyelash in my eye and took care of that. And as David Reed was mentioning, Baron Samedi, the owner of the graveyard, let's thank him for his input. And okay, in breaking news, South Korean lawmakers have voted to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol. What a horrible name, poor son of a bitch. I mean, obviously in Korean, that sounds a lot more euphonic and doesn't carry the same intonations it does in the English, but still, he's President Suk-yeol, and they've managed to impeach him over his failed attempt to impose martial law, which plunged the East Asian democracy of South Korea and our key United States ally on the peninsula into chaos. The vote was 204 in favor and 85 against, doubtless all members of his party, with 3 abstentions and 8 votes ruled invalid. I have no idea why or what their logic was with that, but it's South Korea. They do things a little differently. I've explained before, of course, that they in many ways have run America in the past. And it's the tail wagging the dog. It's not the other way around. So what happens there is important, far more important than you would know. As I've said, this side of the Pacific, the insurer United Health, is violating federal law by strategically limiting access to critical treatment for kids with autism. And that is why we have this outlaw in the popular imagination, who's not merely a criminal. He's a good guy gone bad for good reasons, standing up for the common man against forces of greed, exploitation, even indifference. Luigi Magnoni has rapidly been absorbed into the outlaw tradition. What if we were composing a Western song would be called a murder ballad? Some of the particulars of his alleged crime reveal the knack for the myth-building flourish of all past outlaws. Magnoni has already inspired a growing catalog of protest music. As I said, a good example of the murder ballad would be Beyoncé with her revision of Jolene. When Dolly Parton first sang Jolene, who had stolen her man, she is pleading. It is a pleading to Jolene, please do not take my man. When Beyoncé revised it, it became a murder ballad that she's singing about Jolene in such a manner it implies that she has killed her. So it is, shall we say, the kind of Western song that would be writ concerning Brian Thompson. He would be the Jolene in this case. He broke Luigi's back. And Luigi Magnoni struck back. Now, storms across these United States have brought heavy snow, dangerous ice, and a tornado in my Golden, California. The tornado near a mall in Central California, if you can believe it, has swept up cars, uprooted trees, and sent several people to the hospital. In my own Golden Gated San Francisco, authorities issued our first ever tornado warning. Elsewhere, inclement weather plagued areas of these United States with dangerous conditions. Well, the conditions include heavy snow in my late and sainted legal sire's own upstate New York, Rochester, where my legal father was born, a major ice storm in the Midwest states, and severe weather warnings around Lake Tahoe bring me back closer to home with my perambulation of our weather front on the domestic home front of America. The ice storm began on Friday evening into this weekend and created treacherous driving conditions across Iowa and eastern Nebraska Friday and into yesterday, and prompted temporary closures of Interstate 80 after numerous cars and trucks slid off the road. In upstate New York, more than 33 inches, that would be around 84 centimeters to you Europeans out there, or anyone elsewhere in the world, was reported near Orchard Park, which is often a landing point for lake effect snow. Yesterday, a tornado touched down near a shopping mall in Scotts Valley, California, about 110 kilometers, that's about 70 miles for all you Americans out there, south of San Francisco, around 1:40 p.m. The tornado overturned cars and toppled trees and utility poles, as reported by the National Weather Service. The Scotts Valley Police Department confirmed that several people were injured to the point of being taken to hospitals. Oh shit. So they've just cut me offline. Can you guys still hear me? It says trying to connect. So
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Your stream's still going.
All right. Good. And so I'll see if I can recover my train of thought. I believe both these gentlemen completely, of course, but do want to check for my own. Let's see if we can refresh the page here and see if it reconnects. But obviously they're hitting me hard tonight. And UK, we still seem to be active. Let's take a look at the live stream. It says excellent connection. But then again, it did the first time they cut me offline too, even though it was spinning. The only way I could confirm we had really bad connection was through the online broadcasting software, because I was still hearing both Aristides and Nemo talking on the Skype call, but they couldn't hear me. So very frustrating situation. Okay, such having been expressed, see if I can get back into my train of thought. And with that, here in San Francisco, some trees toppled onto cars and streets and damaged roofs. Today, the Weather Service meteorologist Dalton Balvinge asserted that the damage was due to 129 kilometers per hour winds, straight line winds, which would be about 80 miles per hour by imperial measurement. Not a tornado. Noting an advanced alert did not go out before the last tornado struck nearly 20 years ago. Roger Gass, his surname spelled with two S's, a meteorologist in the Weather Service's office in Monterey, California, said the warning of a possible tornado in San Francisco was a first for my city. Now Gass, who was not there at the time like I was, said, I would guess there wasn't a clear signature on radar for a warning in 2005. Well, both my parents were still alive at that time, and I'm certain he's right, but I do want people to know they didn't announce it, but we were hit by a tornado in the city and county of San Francisco back in 2005. So it's like 20 fucking years ago, 19 years to be precise. The fast-moving storm that hit us this time prompted warnings for residents to take shelter, but few people aside myself have basements in my area. So do think about that. I often speak of my basement. It's a big deal. Most people in San Francisco don't have them. What they have would be what you would call garages. But all that being said, most people in San Francisco don't even have that. So, as I've said, people rent garages like they would a house or an apartment for the same price. That's how rare garages are. But even more rare are actual basements, which are under fucking ground. I've explained the reasons why my home has them. Aside from that, do not get confused. Even though it was extraordinarily high straight line winds that hit San Francisco, a tornado did hit California in the greater San Francisco Bay Area Metroplex region. According to the Weather's Services office in Reno, Nevada, more than a foot, around 30 centimeters, of snow fell at some Lake Tahoe ski resorts, and a 181 kilometer per hour, that would be about 112 miles per hour, gust of wind was recorded at the Mammoth Mountain Resort south of Yosemite National Park. Up to 91 centimeters, that would be a yard of snow, was forecast for the Sierra Nevada mountaintops. The Weekend Tahoe Live Music Festival at Palisades Tahoe Ski Resort in California went ahead as planned in spite of yesterday's snowstorm. The festival's website says that Lil Wayne and Diplo were scheduled to perform today. Now, Lil Wayne, of course, I know looks like shit, and I'm sure he probably sings like it too. I don't know this Diplo guy. Maybe Nemo knows of these characters? Do you know anything about them?
No. I never heard of them.
Okay. Well, Lil Wayne is got in trouble for shit. I think he was pardoned by...
Oh, Lil Wayne?
Yeah!
The rapper? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that dickhead.
Yeah,
I wouldn't give a shit about him, no matter what trouble he got in.
Yeah, well, he was pardoned by Trump.
Oh, well, there you go. He was sucking Trump's dick real hard. Oh, my little house slave. He does a good job.
Yeah, Lil Wayne and Kodak Black were
Yeah,
both...
another shit rapper.
Yeah, were granted pardons by President Trump in his last misadministration, on his last full day in the job. So, as to why, well, Lil Wayne's real name is Dwayne Michael Carter Jr. He pleaded guilty to a federal weapons charge, and he had been found carrying a gun and bullets when police searched his private plane.
I bet it wasn't registered too.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you're right. He was
fucking idiots. Oh, I gotta carry a strap, man. Just fucking get a bodyguard, you dumb fuck. You got all that money.
Thank you. You've got it down. No, you've got it down.
I'm a gangster, G. I carry a gun, G.
Yeah. You got it down. Oh, man. He was facing up to 10 years in prison. But
serves him right anyway.
Yeah, but he got pardoned by President Trump, who praised his work on criminal reform. I mean, he's a criminal. He's going to jail. But President Trump praised his works on criminal reform.
Criminals going to help out other criminals if they'll scratch his back.
There you go. Oh, my God.
He's so talentless, and he deserves any bad thing he gets because he's responsible for corrupting the minds of fucking millions of youth.
Yeah.
With his fucking garbage shit music.
Yeah. And just for looking the way he does. Yeah, I mean, honest to God, he ought to go to jail just for the way he looks. And Kodak Black, quote unquote, what's that?
Oh, throw peanuts at him. Get
Yeah.
locked up in the zoo.
Yeah. And Kodak Black, he supported, quote unquote, underprivileged children. Oh my God.
This ghetto trash. Yeah.
Yeah, he was 23 years old at the time. And he was sentenced to 4 years in jail in 2019 for making a false statement to buy a firearm. Notice that these guys. Okay, so.
Yeah, it's got the buff. Yeah.
So.
Cool. Oh, it's back. It's back.
Yes, OBS Studio said reconnection.
Oh, now it's
successful.
buffering again.
Okay, well, we'll see. The OBS Studio said.
Fuck off, NSA.
Yeah, fuck off, NSA. Jesus Christ. What is so bad about us talking about what pieces of shit Lil Wayne and Kodak Black are? I mean, oh my fucking God. Are they feds or something? Oh, says
yeah, your voice cut out. But...
Oh, man. This says they're trying to connect. Live stream. Says excellent connection. Then it says no data. Says the stream's going to end shortly unless we restart the streaming software. Then it's gone back to excellent connection. Okay, people. Let me know if you can hear us. All right? Because it says excellent connection. We got a green square on the online broadcasting software. So we should be doing okay. Aristides, some news? Report, please. Okay.
I can report that I'm here. Are we here?
Right.
The stream's good. It's going. I can hear the audio.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So did you hear all that adventure, Aristides? Yeah. They were knocking us.
So.
Yeah, they were knocking us off again. I guess because I was hitting their bros. Yeah. How dare you talk about Lil Wayne and Kodak Black like that? They're the best. And but it was Diplo.
Yeah, our kids listen to them. How dare you?
Yeah. No wonder our government's so fucked up. Yeah, no wonder our government's so fucked up. As for this Diplo guy who was singing today, he's some white guy. I have no idea about him other than the fact that he's another.
Or was he singing or rapping?
I think he was. Yeah, that's a good point. I know they're not the same, are they?
Yeah.
He's some award-winning DJ. So he was doing
DJ.
He was disc jockeying. So there you go. He was doing his thing, and
what a shit career.
Yeah, it is in its own right. I mean, they're super sex symbols. But all these super losers want to be DJs. You know, those who make it, good for them. But all these super losers like that. The producer I was stuck with, Pavel Edward, the one who was making friends with young boys in Europe using my son's face as his cover. That piece of shit wanted to be a DJ. That was his fantasy. Want to be a DJ. Of course, he got nowhere near it because he's, just a piece of shit and has no sex appeal.
More like a dick jockey.
Yeah, there we are. In the interim, everybody hit those upvotes for Christ's sakes. We've got a good number of people listening, and I suspect half of them are feds, which is why they keep cutting me off when I'm hitting their bros. At any rate, we had an avalanche warning in effect at least until tomorrow morning in area. Yesterday, Interstate 80 was closed along an 80-mile, or about 130 kilometer stretch from Applegate, California, to the Nevada line just west of Reno. The California Highway Patrol reopened the road in the afternoon for passenger vehicles with chains or four-wheel drive and snow tires. The severe weather in the Midwest has resulted in at least one death. The Washington County Sheriff's Office in Nebraska said a 57-year-old woman died after she lost control of her pickup on Highway 30 near Arlington and hit an oncoming truck. The other driver sustained minor injuries. Businesses announced plans to open late yesterday as temperatures rose high enough in the afternoon to melt the ice in most places. Dave Cousins, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service's office in Davenport, Iowa, said that luckily some warmer air is moving in behind this to make it temporary. Local news outlets reported that tens of thousands of people in western Washington state lost electricity yesterday as the system delivered rain and gusty winds. Now, want everyone to understand, I'm unfolding my little poncho here to envelop myself as the temperature is dropping precipitously right now. But we can take advantage of this moment to reflect upon the fact that it is the 233rd Bill of Rights Day. You see, on this day, and it's still this day because it's not midnight yet here on the left coast, on Wednesday, well, I don't know what day it was, but I know the date, on December 15th, 1791, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution were put in place and called the Bill of Rights. These rights help define the basic rights of Americans and lead the way for more amendments to the Constitution. Now, if I may ask Aristides to go mute, I hear him clicking. Thank you so much, Aristides. Love you. At any rate, the Constitution itself is a fucking rag. What makes it matter are only the amendments. There's nothing in the Constitution in and of itself that really redeems it other than the amendments. I've gone into this before. I'll happily go into it again at some point in the near future. For now, let's tell you how those amendments are threatened. You see, Trump has a plan for the far-right Supreme Court majority. Well, a ransom letter, really. The Trump plan to end birthright citizenship is more conceivable in his second term. Millions of Mexican Americans were deported in the 1930s. We're about to repeat this ethnic cleansing. Understand that our good man Aristides was skeptical about this. Now I'm going to put it in context. You see, given the conservative majority on the Supreme Court, it's not a certainty that the right of natal citizenship will remain in place. Nearly 2 million Mexican Americans, more than half of them United States citizens, were deported without due process during the Great Depression, reminiscent of what is unfolding today. One of the President-elect Donald Trump's first executive orders will be a direct challenge to the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And he's banking on the SCOTUS, SCOTUS, acronymous for Supreme Court of these United States, to uphold his point of view. The day before yesterday, Politico magazine reported that Trump's planned executive order will be aimed at preventing children of undocumented immigrants born in the United States from ever having birthright citizenship. Because presidents cannot undo constitutional provisions on their own, it's likely that litigation over the order will eventually make its way to the High Court, which has a 6-member Russo-radicalized reactionary majority, including 3 judges Trump himself appointed. The news of the executive order comes after Trump hinted at action on birthright citizenship in an interview with NBC News' Kristen Welker. The U.S. Constitution guarantees citizenship to anyone born in the country, even if they are the children of undocumented immigrants. The consensus among leading legal scholars is that the 14th Amendment guarantees the full rights of citizenship to all children born in these United States, even if their parents lack legal status. Yet, according to those same legal experts, it is more conceivable than during his first term that Donald Trump probably will be able to fulfill his stated aim of ending birthright citizenship in these United States when he returns to the White House. The president-elect says he would eliminate that right during his first term, and again recently said during the television interview that he plans to and will use an executive action, or would, his words, maybe have to go back to the people. The aim comes at the same time as Trump plans to carry out mass deportation of millions of undocumented immigrants during his second term, an ambition that has civil liberties groups and many Democrats bracing for economic and legal chaos and protests. But according to some scholars, if Trump were to try to use executive action to eliminate birthright citizenship, courts would probably strike it down because of language contained in the 14th Amendment. Still, given the Russo-radicalized reactionary majority of the Supreme Court, and the fact that one of the people considered a candidate for that court has argued that the provision does not apply to children of, his words, invading aliens, it's not a certainty that birthright citizenship will remain in place. Birthright citizenship dates to the passage of the 14th Amendment in 1868 in the wake of the American Civil War, and it was intended to repeal the Dred Scott decision, in which the Supreme Court held that enslaved people were not citizens of these United States. The amendment declared that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. But in 2018, Trump said that he could and would abuse an executive order to end the right to citizenship for children born in these United States to non-citizens. He also said, inaccurately, that these United States was the only country that allowed birthright citizenship, when in fact, many countries provide the same right. Now, I've just received some sigils,
I was
wards.
just putting that there for protection.
Thank you. I appreciate that profoundly. So you're doing what Brendan Zoget does to keep us from getting knocked off. I appreciate that profoundly. Good idea. Good idea. And it tends to work. I notice that when those wards are up, we get knocked off a lot less. Let's see if that pattern continues. And these are, of course, the elder sign and various other sigils that are very powerful runic sigils that will likely protect us throughout the night from being knocked off again, so that I can continue to provide you your service. I do hope for remuneration, and of course I'll emphasize that. I haven't been getting many contributions for Christmas. I definitely need them, not even for the sake of the spirit of the season, just knowing that I will overspend and therefore need to recover my losses to pay the rent. Okay, well, we'll get back to that when I say goodbye. In the interim, during an interview on HBO, Trump said, "We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, drops a baby, and that baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it has to end. Then Trump said recently on Meet the Press that he did not take the executive action during his first term because he had to fix COVID first, but that he would do so on the first day of his new misadministration. Supporters of eliminating birthright citizenship have argued that the jurisdiction language could exclude children of undocumented immigrants. On X, of course, the Republican Utah Senator Mike Lee posted, "Congress has the power to define what it means to be born in the United States and, quote, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, unquote. While current law contains no such restriction, Congress could pass a law defining what it means to be born in the United States, quote, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, unquote, excluding prospectively from birthright citizenship individuals born in the U.S. to illegal aliens." Adam Winkler, a law professor at UCLA, asserts there is no, his words, legal understanding of the term jurisdiction, to support the argument that, his words, undocumented immigrants are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The government has power over them. That is what we mean by jurisdiction. If conservatives are willing to say that undocumented immigrants can never be jailed for a crime, maybe they can start to get somewhere. But I don't think that's a conclusion that they really want to reach. James Ho, a U.S. Fifth Circuit judge and a Trump appointee, who some have reported will be appointed to the Supreme Court should there be an opening, recently told Reason magazine that no one has ever argued that the children of invading aliens are entitled to birthright citizenship. Yet he himself previously offered the opposite opinion, writing, "Birthright citizenship is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. That birthright is protected no less for children of undocumented persons than for descendants of Mayflower passengers." Trump did not clarify what he meant when he said that to eliminate birthright citizenship, he would maybe have to go back to the people. But by way of example, in 1986, the Supreme Court ruled that the 14th Amendment did not prevent states from criminalizing private sexual conduct involving same-sex couples. Then, in 2003, the court overturned that decision and declared all sodomy laws unconstitutional. To amend the Constitution procedurally, which has not happened since 1992, the amendment would have to be proposed either by Congress with a 2/3 majority vote in both the House and the Senate, or by a constitutional convention called by 2/3 of the state legislatures. Then the legislatures of 3/4 of the states would need to ratify it. But for Trump, even if he is unable to muster the support for a constitutional amendment, or if the court struck down an executive order, he could conclude, in the words of Andrew Rudalevich, a Bowdoin College professor who studies the American presidency and wrote a book on the limits of presidential power, that, in his own words, he gets value out of fighting out of showing that he is trying to change the established way of doing business, even if he is incorrect on the merits. It's quite a procedural barrier in terms of getting a supermajority in Congress, getting a supermajority of states to sign off on it. It's a pretty high bar. This is not something that is subject to unilateral executive order. The language of the 14th Amendment is pretty clear. In the unlikely event that Trump eliminates birthright citizenship, the scholars concur that the change would only hurt our empire. Now, I'm going to check in on everybody because we got a... Okay, that's good. He's only changing sigils. Good man. He's protecting us. Thank you, Nemo. Oh, I like what you said in the chat. NSA, numbskull assholes, worthless cretins, get a life. Everybody's going to get theirs. Everybody's day is going to come. Okay, I like it. There you go. Yes. Thank you. And it is the fucking NSA. They are the people of Michael Aquino. So thanks for the elder sign. That's our man, Nemo. He's protecting us. He's got the stars looking over us, and they're looking right. Okay. Now, while Amanda Frost, a University of Virginia law professores, and expertise in immigration and citizenship law, thinks it's unlikely the Supreme Court would overturn birthright citizenship, she pointed out that the court can be swayed by public sentiment. To quote a she, at length and verbatim, "The way constitutional change generally happens is an accumulation of various voices supporting that change and public opinion. At the end of his last presidency, if I was asked, is this something he can do? I would have said, it's never going to happen. It's just a talking point. The Constitution text and the judicial precedent and very long-standing practice and the purpose of the provision all say no. But at the end of the day, the Constitution means only what 5 members of the Supreme Court say it means. The 14th Amendment was intended to end caste in America, the idea that there is a lower class, a subclass that lives among us. This would bring that back. Exempla gratiae. One sunny afternoon in February, a large group of plainclothes federal agents descended on Los Angeles' La Placita Park, a sanctuary and bustling cultural hub for the city's growing Mexicano diaspora. Wielding guns and batons, they barricaded the park and demanded proof of citizenship or legal residency from the congregants they trapped within. Those who failed to produce papers were arrested. More than 400 people were detained and forced on a train back to Mexico, a place the majority had never been to in their entire lives. It's a scene we all know will come to pass in President-elect Donald Trump's second term, especially after he doubled down on a campaign promise to launch the largest deportation operation in American history and confirmed he would abuse the military to execute hardline immigration policies. But this particular episode happened in 1931 as part of an earlier era of mass deportations that scholars concur is reminiscent of what is unfolding today. The La Placita sweep became the first public immigration raid in Los Angeles and one of the largest in a wave of repatriation drives that rolled across this country during the Great Depression. Mexicano farm workers indiscriminately deemed illegal aliens became scapegoats for job shortages and shrinking public benefits. President Herbert Hoover's provocative slogan, "American jobs for real Americans," kicked off a spate of local legislation banning employment of anyone of Mexican descent. Police descended on workplaces, parks, hospitals, and social clubs, arresting and dumping people across the border in trains and buses. Nearly 2 million Mexicano-Americanos, more than half of them United States citizens, were deported without due process. Families were torn apart, and many children never again saw their deported parents for as long as they lived. Hoover's Mexicano repatriation program is, among mass deportation efforts in the past, most similar to Trump's own stated plans. To quoteist Kevin R. Johnson, a professor of public interest law and Chicano or Chicana studies at the University of California, Davis School of Law, this was an ethnic cleansing, an effort to remove Mexicans from parts of the country. This episode had a ripple effect that lasted generations and a long-term impact on the sense of identity on persons of Mexican ancestry. Part of the strategy is making the lives of undocumented immigrants so unpleasant that some will just leave and discourage others from ever even coming. It's a mistake to think building a wall or engaging in nasty deportation campaigns will end undocumented immigration. As long as people can obtain work legally or illegally, they're going to keep coming. Oh, good. We've got a nice response from Brendan Zoget. Yes, I'm fine. How's it going? Doing good now. Good man. Okay. All right. Let me get back into the stream of things. That's actually an entendre. Pretty good one, too, if I must say so myself. All such being said, everybody hit those upvotes. Get on to your other channel and hit more upvotes. Brendan Zoget, put an upvote on this episode. Thank you. God knows, we need as many as we can. In Los Angeles, it was a common practice for Mexicanos to deny their Mexican ancestry and claim Spanish or European heritage to avoid suspicion. Well into the 1960s, the decade into which I myself was delivered into this world, people were afraid to leave home without a passport or identification papers, lest they be arrested. More than 400,000 Mexicano-Americans were deported in my own golden state of California alone. But the legacy of repatriation went unacknowledged for many decades. Finally, in 2005, California State Senator Joseph Dunn helped pass legislation apologizing to people who suffered under the program. Since his first presidential run, Trump has invoked President Dwight D. Eisenhower's mass deportation program as a blueprint for his own agenda. During the Second World War, the United States and Mexicano government enacted the Bracero program, that allowed Mexicana farmhands to temporarily work in these United States. But many growers continued to hire undocumented immigrants because it was cheaper. In 1954, the Eisenhower administration cracked down on undocumented labor by launching Operation Wetback, a year-long series of raids named after a racial epithet for people who illegally crossed the Rio Grande. Border Patrol agents used military-style tactics to sweep up laborers from farms and factories and send them back to Mexico. More than 3,000 people were expelled every day, and many died under inhumane conditions in detention and transport. The government said it deported more than 1 million people in total, though historians have put the actual number as higher than even that. This is Eisenhower, people. The man you people think of as the great Nazi fighter. The man who saved America from Hitler and other such bullshit. He's a man who conducted a mass ethnic cleansing campaign in which he killed many women and children in mass transportation via their forced detention. By the way, thank you for the symbol of strength, the fire horse from our delightful Brendan Zoget. With that, returning to my train of thought and thanking all of you who are joining us. Now, Trump has deployed racist tropes against various ethnic groups, including Mexicanos as drug-dealing rapists and Haitians as pet-eaters, while lamenting a lack of transplants from nice white-majority countries like Denmark and Switzerland. Yesterday, that's last month, sources close to the president told NBC News that he could prioritize deporting undocumented Chinese nationals. Trump plausibly could deport 1 million people, abusing military-style raids of the Eisenhower era, but it is unlikely that he can expel 11 million undocumented immigrants, according to an estimate by the American Immigration Council. Deporting 1 million people a year would cost more than $960 billion over a decade. Still, his rhetoric alone will foment fear and panic in immigrant communities. But Eisenhower's immigration approach also differed from Trump's in notable ways. Though the administration did launch flashy raids, it also allowed farm owners to rehire some deportees through the Bracero program, essentially creating a pathway for authorized entry into these United States. Emphasizing that so far, Trump has hammered down on mass deportations, sans providing an option for legal immigration or naturalization, May Ngai, surname spelled Ngai, a historianist whose book titled Impossible Subjects explores how illegal migration became the central issue in American immigration policy, concludes that the politics of deportation have always contained an important racial dimension. Referring to a 2018 remark from Trump about crisis-stricken nations like El Salvador and Haiti, she said, he doesn't know the whole story of Operation Wetback, but he's been very clear about going after people of color, people from shithole countries. Deportations also appear to have harmed the local economy. Far from protecting jobs for white Americans, According to a 2017 academic paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research, the repatriation of Mexicans may have further increased unemployment and depressed wages in the 1930s, exacerbating the Great Depression. Economists today predict a similar outcome. According to a study by the American Immigration Council, expelling millions of undocumented construction, hospitality, and agriculture workers will shrink the gross domestic product by $1.7 trillion. There's little evidence to suggest that mass deportation efforts of the 1930s and 1950s were even successful at curbing illegal immigration. The number of undocumented immigrants has tripled since the 1990s, despite a steady rise in border security measures and patrol agents. But fear-mongering may be the true legacy and intention of mass deportations campaigns. Self-deportation has been the policy preference for establishment Republicans, including the former presidential candidate, Mitt Romney. To reiterate, birthright citizenship being enshrined in the Constitution came about in the wake of the American Civil War between the states for rights, when lawmakers sought to ensure that both formerly enslaved Americans and their children were guaranteed fundamental rights afforded to all citizens. The 14th Amendment states, "All persons born or naturalized in these United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of these United States and of the state wherein they reside." It expressly prohibits states from passing or enforcing laws that abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of these United States, forbids any state's effort to deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or to deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. Still, reactionary, Russo-radicalized immigration activists say the phrase, "subject to the jurisdiction thereof," must be subject to further litigation, arguing that the court will yet provide additional clarity to the meaning of the phrase. Hans von Spakovsky, who is Senior Legal and Judicial Studies Fellow at the Far Right Heritage Foundation, told the Fourth Estate, and here I quote his tea, "What will happen is the government will get sued, and it'll go up to the Supreme Court, and we'll finally get a final decision on this issue. The last case on this was 1898, so it's a very long time ago. And I actually think when the Supreme Court looks at this, they will realize and uphold what Trump does, because he put them in their place." In other words, Trump gave them their jobs, so they owe motherless Trump a favor. The 1898 case Spakovsky references, United States versus Wong Kim Ark, involved a San Francisco man born to legal Chinese immigrants. While the court ruled in his favor that he was indeed a U.S. citizen, conservatives argue that citizenship should only be granted with permission from the United States government. Based on who is deemed a real American by someone's arbitrary standards. Michael Hogue, who is the Director of Federal Relations at the anti-immigration group Numbers USA, has told the Fourth Estate, "It'll be good to get it back in front of the Supreme Court, have it relitigated. The intention wasn't for the system we have now, and the urgency, too, is that whatever number you accept, 10 million, 15 million illegal immigrants come across, well, all the children that they're having are going to become citizens of the United States." One potential point of negotiation could be that in exchange for allowing exceptions to birthright citizenship, Trump may offer a compromise in the form of a pathway to citizenship for beneficiaries of the DACA, the DACA, the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals program, who are also known as Dreamers. But immigration advocates counter that allowing that trade-off would amount to a slippery slope that could further erode rights for all Americans further down the road. Beatriz Lopez, co-executrix directress of the Immigration Hub, so told Politico magazine. And here I quote his thing. "We take Trump at his word and his track record. We recognize this setup. It's Lucy in the football, where citizenship for dreamers is a possibility if Democrats are willing to change the Constitution itself to end birthright citizenship and deport the parents of dreamers and millions of other undocumented people. That's not a compromise. That's a ransom letter. Yet, for all this, the United States military can't even shoot down the mystery drones. Small, easily weaponizable drones have become a feature of battlefields from the Middle East to Ukraine. Now the threat looms over the American homeland, and the Pentagon's ability to respond is limited, to say the least. As warnings come of a third nuclear age, the Kremlin has been at war with NATO for 10 years. Now, in its shaping phase, if we don't act now to get ready for what Russia might do next, the cost will be devastating. You see, a specter is haunting these United States. The specter of drone warfare. Since the middle of November, unidentified unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, which are correctly pronounced as waves, have lit up the skies above New Jersey, startling residents and baffling military and government officials. The U.S. Army's Picatinny Arsenal Research and Manufacturing Facility in the state's Morris County reported 11 confirmed instances of mysterious drones illegally entering its airspace since the middle of the month, while a dozen drones were spotted hovering over United States Naval Weapons Station Early, EARLE, in Monmouth County in early December. Similar sightings were reported in at least 6 other counties throughout the state, according to the Coast Guard. A group of drones even followed one of that service's vessels in close pursuit near a state park. The spate of drone sightings in the skies above New Jersey have caused alarm among state lawmakers, prompting one to call for a limited state of emergency until the public receives an explanation. Regarding the source of the unidentified drones, one Republican U.S. congressman even claimed the drones were originating from an Iranian mothership lurking off the state's coastline, an assertion that the U.S. Defense Department quickly batted down. In a December 10th letter, New Jersey Representative Chris Smith told Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, "As you know, Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst possess capabilities to identify and take down unauthorized unmanned aerial systems and have utilized this capability to address overflights of the installation. I urgently request all capabilities possessed by the Department of Defense, especially those in use by the JBMDL, the Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, to be immediately deployed to identify and address the potential threats posed by drones over the state of New Jersey." Despite the growing chorus from New Jersey lawmakers, the U.S. military appears relatively unimpressed with the sudden incursions. In a December 11th statement, U.S. NORTHCOM, that's the Northern Command, revealed that the command had conducted a deliberate analysis of the events in consultation with other military organizations and interagency partners, and at this time we have not been requested to assist with these events. The following day, White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby stated that many of the alleged drone sightings that had alarmed civilian observers on the ground in recent weeks were, in fact, conventional manned aerocraft. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and Department of Homeland Security echoed this assessment in a statement on Thursday, saying, "It appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned aerocraft operating lawfully. There are no reported or confirmed drone sightings in any restricted aerospace." On Wednesday, midweek last, the Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh told reporters, and here I quote as she, "At this time, we have no evidence that these activities are coming from a foreign entity or the work of an adversary. We're going to continue to monitor what is happening. At no point were our installations threatened when this activity was occurring." In an interesting confluence of events, the U.S. Department of Justice that same day announced the arrest of a Chinese citizen for flying a drone over and taking photos of Vandenberg Space Force Base in my own Golden, California. The alarm over the sudden drone incursions over New Jersey, neighboring New York and Pennsylvania, and near sensitive U.S. government sites in particular, even if overblown, isn't completely unwarranted. Officials at NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, the joint U.S.-Canadian military organization tasked with overseeing air sovereignty on the continent, revealed in October that they had received reports of nearly 600 incursions above domestic United States military installations since 2022. The issue is, American law severely limits how the U.S. military can respond to these mysterious drones, even if the number of incidents has been growing for years. Indeed, for several months earlier this year, unidentified drones repeatedly circled Plant 42 in my own state nation of California, the Edwards Air Force Base installation where defense contractor Northrop Grumman has been working on the Air Force's vaunted new B-21 radar stealth bombers. In December of yesteryear, Langley Air Force Base in Virginia was targeted by a wave of mysterious drone overflights, prompting the Pentagon to relocate a contingent of F-22 Raptor fighter jets stationed there to another base. And the New Jersey incidents come on the heels of a mid-November series of drone incursions near Royal Air Force Lakenheath in the United Kingdom, which, while not a U.S. diplomatic installation, or domestic installation, I mean to say, hosts a strategically important contingent of American fighter jets, among other capabilities. It appears that Pentagon assets in these continental United States have been subject to such drone activity as far back as 2019, when a fleet of U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke destroyers, Arleigh Burke class destroyers, was shadowed by a swarm of drones for several days during maneuvers at a training range off the coast of Southern California. Later that year, a series of mysterious drone sightings in eastern Colorado and western Nebraska and Kansas confounded not just local law enforcement and federal agencies, but alarmed Air Force officers at nearby F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, home to one of the Pentagon's many Minuteman III ICBM, or intercontinental ballistic missile fields. These incidents aren't limited to U.S. military tactics, or should I say facilities. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that in October of 2023, several drones were detected in the aerospace above the U.S. Energy Department's Nevada National Security Site, which is used for nuclear research and development. And according, back in 2019, the Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station in Arizona, the most powerful nuclear power plant in these United States, was subject to a series of mass drone incursions that Nuclear Regulatory Commission officials would later characterize as a dronapalooza, albeit with grave concern over the potential vulnerability exposed by that incursion. In email correspondence regarding the incident, one senior NRC security official at Palo Verde wrote, and here I quote his T, "I would point out that restricted airspace will do nothing to stop an adversarial attack, and even the detection systems identified earlier in this email chain have limited success rates, and there is even lower likelihood that law enforcement will arrive quickly enough to actually engage with the pilots. We should be focusing our attention on getting federal regulations and laws changed to allow sites to be defended and to identify engineering fixes that would mitigate an adversarial attack before there are licensed facilities become vulnerable." While unmanned aerial vehicles, these waves, UAVs, have been in military use for generations for surveillance and reconnaissance, the U.S. military is largely responsible for transforming modern drones into vehicles of precision violence during the early years of the global war on terrorism, a policy especially expanded under U.S. President Barack Obama. In more recent years, the rise of cheap, commercially available, unmanned platforms like those used by hobbyists has turned the small drone into the weapon of choice for both nation states and irregular forces abroad. From militant groups like ISIS in Iraq and Syria, where the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen to the Russian and Ukrainian militaries, with a potential conflict over China, with China over my Taiwan, looming on the horizon amid the U.S. military's pivot to great power competition. The Pentagon is itself in the midst of a major surge in both unmanned capabilities and technology to defend against weaponized drones belonging to foreign adversaries. The U.S. military has been slowly but surely adjusting to the sudden spike in mysterious drone incursions near sensitive sites across these United States with an expanded counter-drone strategy. In early December, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin signed the Pentagon's new strategy for countering unmanned systems, which seeks to unify disparate DoD, or Department of Defense, efforts to address the rise of drone threats, both at home and abroad, into a single coherent framework, one that implicitly acknowledges the potential for the rising tide of domestic drone threats to grow from intrusive surveillance risks to something more damaging. The unclassified fact sheet on the new Pentagon strategy states, from the Middle East to Ukraine and across the globe, including in the U.S. homeland, unmanned systems are reshaping tactics, techniques, and procedures, challenging established operational principles and condensing military innovation cycles. The relatively low cost, widely available nature of these systems has, in effect, democratized precision strike. The Pentagon has thus been working overtime to field fresh counter-drone capabilities to U.S. forces deployed overseas in recent years, including traditional firearms outfitted with computerized optics and remotely operated vehicle-mounted heavy weapons turrets, laser-guided rocket and missile systems, AI-assisted kinetic interceptors, and, radio frequency and global positioning system jamming electronic warfare suites, and even exotic directed energy weapons like high-energy lasers or light amplification and emission radiation and high-powered microwaves, among others. As recently as late October, Northcom was working in conjunction with the Federal Aviation Administration to demo fresh counter-drone tech as part of its Falcon Peak 2025 experiment at Fort Carson in Colorado. But U.S. military officials also indicated to reporters that the types of counter-drone capabilities the Pentagon may be able to bring to bear for domestic defense may be limited to non-kinetic soft kill means like RF, radio frequency, and GPS, geosynchronous positioning satellite signals, jamming, and other relatively low-tech interception techniques like nets and string streamers due to legal constraints on the U.S. military's ability to engage with drones over American soil. Now, just checking in on a notification I just recently received. Our man Brendan must have quite the delay, or he just began listening. He says, Project Bluebeam, been seeing SpaceX satellite train nigh every night. Could be an array to Project Foo Fighters, or project them. Thank you, Brendan. Appreciate your sharing that with us, of course. And it may well be, for all we know. Now, at that time during the counter-drone experiment, the Northcom boss, Air Force General Gregory Willeu, told reporters and here I quote his T at length and verbatim, by all indications, small unmanned aerial systems, or SUAS, SUAS, will present a safety and security risk to military installations and other critical infrastructure for the foreseeable future. Mitigating those risks requires a dedicated effort across all federal departments and agencies, state, local, tribal, and territorial communities, and Congress to further develop the capabilities, coordination, and legal authorities necessary for detecting, tracking, and addressing potential SUAS threats in the homeland. So, by SUAS, he's referring to, well, sudden, unexpected American, some kind of mechanical implement. The threat and the need to counter these threats is growing faster than the policies and procedures that are in place to can keep up with. A lot of tasks we have in the homeland, it's a very sophisticated environment in that it's complicated from a regulatory perspective. It's a very civilianized environment. It's not a war zone. Those are the words of Air Force General Gregory Willou. Defense officials echoed this sentiment during the unveiling of the Pentagon's new counter-drone strategy in early December. A senior official telling reporters at the time that the homeland is a very different environment in that we have a lot of hobbyist drones here that are no threat at all, that are sort of congesting the environment. At the same time, we have, from a statutory perspective and from an intelligence perspective, quite rightly, a more constrained environment in terms of our ability to act. The statute in question, according to defense officials, is a specific subsection, a subsection of Title 10 of the U.S. Code, which is law as established by Congress and which governs the United States Armed Forces. The section, known as 130 with an I in parentheses, 130I, encompasses military authorities regarding the protection certain facilities and assets from unmanned aircraft. It gives U.S. forces the authority to take action to defend against drones, including with measures to disrupt control of the unmanned aircraft system or unmanned aircraft itself without prior consent, including by disabling the unmanned aircraft system or unmanned aircraft by intercepting, interfering, or causing interference with wire, oral, electronic, or radio communications used to control the unmanned aircraft system or unmanned aircraft, and to use reasonable force to disable, damage, or destroy the unmanned aircraft system or unmanned aircraft itself. As I myself would point out, the 130I limits when and where the U.S. military can actually deploy counter-drone assets outside of immediate self-defense in the face of an imminent threat. Notably, it requires the Defense Secretary to coordinate with both the United States Transportation Secretary and FAA, the Federal Aviation Administrator, regarding any counter-drone implementation that might affect aviation safety, children, or rather it says civilian aviation, and aerospace operations. Aircraft airworthiness or the use of space. Aerospace. Not only that, but 130I authority is only applicable to a specific list of installations, mainly those dealing with nuclear deterrence and missile defense functions of the United States national security apparatus. This, in turn, limits what kinds of counter-drone systems the U.S. military can actually deploy domestically. Service members may be up to their eyes in fresh counter-drone tech overseas, but the regulatory environment at home is rigid enough that hard Q solutions like missiles, guns, and other kinetic interceptors aren't even considered potential options because there's simply too much risk that they might end up inflicting collateral damage on innocent, unsuspecting civilians in nearby neighborhoods. Even soft kill solutions like RF or radio frequency and GPS, geosynchronous positioning satellites, jamming entire, well, even their jamming requires coordination with the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, and other federal agencies to prevent potential harm to civilian air travel. Approvals that will slow down the regulation, the reaction time, I mean to say, among base security forces amid a potential drone incursion. As one official at Falcon Peak was quoted as saying, "Given the impact of GPS denial just across infrastructure and all that stuff, it is a very, very difficult capability to get permissions to utilize." While the Pentagon's broad new counter-drone strategy is a step in the right direction when it comes to bolstering domestic drone defenses, Congress has taken action as well. In the compromise version of the annual NDAA, or National Defense Authorization Act, defense budget legislation unveiled in December, lawmakers included language calling upon the Pentagon to not just conduct an assessment of the counter-drone technology landscape at large, but generate recommendations on how policy changes could reduce the amount of burdensome bureaucratic coordination between federal agencies required to address the growing number of drone incursions and, in an ideal world, allow the U.S. military to move quickly and decisively to counter intrusive drones at sensitive installations before they become dangerous. The explanatory statement accompanying the compromise NDAA reads, "We agree that U.S. troops have the inherent right of self-defense, including from drone attacks, wherever they may be." At the moment, the Pentagon seems unconvinced that the Northeast drone sightings and earlier incursions are connected to a foreign adversary. But with lawmakers increasingly concerned with the potential threat to sensitive installations and critical infrastructure in their states, the U.S. military's renewed approach to counter-drone defense can't come soon enough. Now, across the Atlantic, the time has come for the United Kingdom to start gearing up to be ready for war in every respect. Last week, the UK Chief of Defence, Admiral Sir Tony Radakin, warned us that we are at the dawn of a third nuclear age. He misses the point. The nuclear threat is deadly, but it is our conventional weakness that will invite attack by the Russian Empire. we must recognize that Russia's war in Ukraine is more than a cynical and genocidal assault against a democratic neighbor by a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, a signatory of the United Nations Charter prohibiting the abuse of force in international relations, no less. It is a war against the West itself and all that brings. It is also a war against Ukraine joining the West. And it started not with the full-scale invasion in February of 2022, but in 2014 with the annexation of the Crimea. As Dmitry Trenin, former head of the Carnegie Moscow Center and an ex-senior Soviet army officer himself, wrote in 2016, "The Kremlin has been at war with NATO since 2014. And if you think evidence of this, if you need evidence of this, look no further than at the steady drumbeat of hybrid or asymmetric attacks against the West, the proven interference in the Scottish and Brexit referendums in 2014 and 2016, and the US presidential election in 2017. The Salisbury Novichok attack in 2018, a weapons-grade nerve agent which, well, was abused in an attack that, but for the grace of God, could have killed tens of thousands of people. Regular acts of sabotage and arson, most recently in DHL warehouses, and probably on the DHL freight-carrying aircraft which crashed in Lithuania last month. Drone activity around the RAF, or Royal Air Force, and USAF, USAF, or United States Air Force, aero bases in eastern England, and blatant attempts to manipulate elections in Romania, Moldova, and Georgia in recent weeks. In Russian military doctrine, this is the shaping phase, the undermining of the integrity of the target state or states through the manipulation of minorities, psychological operations, cyber attacks, use of special forces, assassinations, and sabotage below the threshold of conventional war. Does this presage war with the Russian Empire? Not necessarily, but it all depends on us. Respond with strength, and the Russians will back off. Show weakness, and Russia will press ahead. We must recognize Russia under Putin for what it is, rather than what we would like it to be. Rightly, we respect, admire, and even love Russian music, literature, ballet, and culture. However, Russia is also a cruel, vindictive, and mass murderous state, which has only ever been an empire. Imperialism is woven into its DNA. Russia's story is one of expansion, of taking over neighboring states, forcing them into colonial submission until it overreaches itself and contracts, and then starts again. Integral to Russians is the notion that the Ukraine has no right to exist as a sovereign state, and that Russia can never be the country it has the right to be if Ukraine is independent. Putin's Russia will not stop at Ukraine. If the Russian president achieves his aim of annexing its 4 eastern oblasts and establishing a puppet government in Kiev, which will do his bidding, expect him to move on to other former Soviet states, as he is already doing in Moldova, Georgia, and even Romania. Never part of the Soviet Union, but part of the greater Soviet Empire under the guise of the Warsaw Pact. In time, it will be the turn of the Baltic states, all reluctant colonies of the Tsarist and greater Soviet empires. Putin is, after all, the the man who described the breakup of the Greater Soviet Union as the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century, and who has stated that the most appropriate security settlement for Europe is a new Yalta. In addition to dominating Eastern Europe, as Stalin did thanks to the First Yalta Agreement of 1945, Putin wishes to see the destruction of NATO, an alliance he sees as a direct threat to the Russian Empire. It is his intention to decouple America from European defense, which is why the champagne corks were seen to be popping all over the Kremlin when Trump was re-elected President of the United States of America. Right now, the only thing stopping Putin from achieving his aims is that he is fixed in Ukraine. But Russia has the strategic initiative in that campaign, and despite the mass casualties it has suffered, is inching forward incrementally in the eastern Donbass and in the Kursk Oblast. Ukraine continues to put up a valiant fight, but has been dependent on support of NATO and its other partners to avoid defeat. Its partners have given much, but without any clear strategy designed to achieve an agreed end state, and many partners have no more to give. Any NATO strategy to support Ukraine and defeat the Russian Empire in the Ukraine would have required a mindset shift and degree of sacrifice from comfortable and complacent Western democracies, which has proved too much for NATO leaders and electorates. For as long as it takes is an easy slogan, a cliche. It is not a strategy. And the consequence has been the cautious, incremental dribbling of support by individual nations on a bilateral basis. It has been too little, too late, and has brought the Ukraine to the brink of defeat. The return of Trump to the White House is likely to compound this. He has promised to end the war in 24 hours. Any Trump-brokered deal which allows Russia to hold on to significant Ukrainian territory will allow Putin to declare a victory. He will then regenerate his armed forces for another attempt at completing his work in Ukraine within 5 years. Then, I guarantee thee, he will make his moves to achieve his other European targets, the Baltic states and Eastern Poland. Vladimir Putin will not stop at Ukraine. All the former Soviet states are at risk. Trump has also put the final nail in the coffin of the Pax Americana with his February 2024 announcement that he would encourage Russia to attack any European country which has failed to pay its dues. In the future, European members of NATO and Canada can make no assumptions that Trump would ever honor NATO's doctrine of the collective defense under Article 5 of the Washington Treaty. Truly, European and Canadian reluctance to share the burden of NATO's defense spending with the USA over decades has comest home to roost. If we are to deter a third world war, Europe must step up to the mark. But the omens are not good. Both the United Germany and the Fifth French Republic, the engines of European Union and major economies within NATO, are in political and economic turmoil. In his speech, Admiral Radakin said, "Wild threats of tactical nuclear use by Russia, Red China's nuclear buildup, Iran's failure to cooperate with a nuclear deal, and North Korea's erratic behavior were among the threats facing the West." But while the new UK government talks of defense being the first priority, notably it did not figure in the new Prime Minister's recent top 6 priorities. Any pretense of the United Kingdom being a leader in NATO is rendered hollow by the reality that with the unusable nuclear deterrent gobbling up 40% of the defense budget, the UK is spending no more than about 1.6% of gross domestic product on conventional defense, a long way down the league table of member states. In contrast, Poland, the Baltic, and the Nordic states are the exemplars in Europe and have much to teach those 5 G7 NATO members: the United Germany, France, the UK, Italia, and Canada, which all could and must do more on the cold frontier with Russia. Sometimes when you stand where you stand really does affect how you think. Imagine yourself stamping in the snow in the Estonian border town that during World War II was the dividing line of the world. Narva, overlooking a river that marks the country's eastern frontier. The Battle of Narva Bridgehead was the campaign that stalled the Greater Soviet's Estonian operation in the surroundings of the town of Narva for half a year, in which, for 6 months, the SS stood against the mechanized hordes of communist Russia bloated on American capitalist Lend-Lease. Here, then, I place a link into the chat where you can access a video that I want you to watch later, explaining the little-known Battle of Narva, in which 70,000 Schutzstaffel, or Secret Service troops, consecrated by Adolf Hitler himself, fought off 500,000 men for half a year. This was the heroism of those Nazis you so hate. Across that narrow stretch of gray water, flecked with ice, is a squat and charmless-seeming Russian town, Ivangorod. Not far over the horizon is St. Petersburg, Russia's second city. The border there is closed to travel for most, except a few Russian passport holders. In that part of NATO, Russia looms very large indeed. That's a problem. Russia is growing ever more hostile every day. This is just one corner of a 2,500 kilometer or so frontier where NATO bumps up directly to our rival. As one would hear repeatedly from police and other officials in Narva, this is becoming an ever colder front line of geopolitique. The length of that border roughly doubled last year when nearby Finland and then Sweden joined NATO. Were Ukraine ever to join, as it should be able to one day, that line will be vastly extended. At Narva, it is well monitored by the professional police and border guards. They in turn are backed by United German, Greater British, and other NATO troops deployed to Estonia. We are going to bring our man Nemo on for a few statements before he retires for the night.
Yep.
So, dearest Nemo.
Yeah. Hello and goodbye, good morning, good night to everybody, and please support Douglas Dietrich any way you can. Send donations towards him via PayPal. Any amount you can afford is greatly appreciated.
God bless you. We love you dearly. Stay safe and be well.
You too. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much. That's Nemo Albano. He's our man, and he does everything he can to download the episodes. A great man. Without him, we wouldn't be able to do it. So, our man, Project Bluebeam, Brendan Zogid, if you'd like to say hi, he points out the fact that he himself has been seeing the SpaceX satellite train every night that could be an array to project Foo Fighters once Bluebeam is started as an operation, once the operation goes active, proactive. In the interim, he's also protecting us with sigils, dear Brendan. Thank you so much. Hopefully that prevents them from taking us off, as they've been doing throughout the night. Well, I've been talking about the fact that we have NATO forces in Estonia. In reality, however, these small Western forces can serve as little more than a tripwire. If Russia under Vladimir Putin wants to test NATO's resolve directly in the next few years, and warnings grow that he will escalate from his already aggressive abuse of cyber and hybrid warfare, sabotage, and assassinations in the West, he will start somewhere like Narva. He talked in 2022 of rejoining Narva to the Russian Empire. There, because of forced deportations last century, the vast majority of the Estonians are ethnically Russian. Around 1/3 of locals in Narva are even Russian citizens. Most are deeply sympathetic to the Russian Empire. Mr. Putin may claim a pretext that he must protect fellow Russian speakers. Just take a look, meanwhile, at how Russia is reimposing its grip on Georgia. An overwhelmingly pro-EU population is protesting this weekend against a government that increasingly does Russia's bidding. Estonia knows Russia's history all too well. In the mid-1990s, the people of Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, fizzed with optimism because they had recently shrugged off the decades-long grasp of the Great Bear. For much of the 20th century, Russia had throttled Estonia. Estonians know their independence could be threatened again, even though they sit now within both the European Union and North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it is no wonder that, in the past couple of years, they have been at the forefront of trying to push others in Europe to do more for Ukraine and to stand up to the threat from Mr. Putin. The leaders of this great nation who have been forcing this confrontation to be taken seriously are stymied by the leaders of spineless Europe. The leaders of 10 North European countries, including Sir Keir Starmer, Britain's Prime Minister, gather in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, in the next couple of days to redeem themselves. They will discuss how the more dynamic parts of Europe must start to offer leadership within NATO. It is too long overdue. Great Britain, for one, needs to stiffen its resolve. Too few European politicians, already unpopular, will tell their voters that taxes must rise to pay for higher military spending. Instead, they agree that somebody should confront the Russian Empire, but imply that can happen without spending going up. Far better to tell it to voters straight. Many NATO members now, or will soon, hit a target to spend 2% of gross domestic product on defense. But that figure is clearly too low. Russia itself devotes 8% of its gross domestic product to its armed forces and other security. And Mr. Putin looks set to spend ever more in the coming years. Russia's military heft is already at least equal to that of Great Britain, the Fifth French Republic, the United Germany, and Poland combined. Without the dominant presence of America in NATO, in other words, Europe will be left flailing. Donald Trump becomes president next month. Europeans, the clock is ticking. We must recognize that what Putin's Russia has done to Ukraine will, unless deterred, do to other European states if NATO fails to put in place an effective deterrent. We will only achieve peace for ourselves, our children and grandchildren, and prevent a third world war between NATO and Russia with a band of deterrent steel from the Baltic to the Black Sea. This is something that we now have to be ready to do without the American lead. And it means gearing up to be ready for war in every respect, increasing the size and capability of our armed forces, inescapably reintroducing conscription, defending our cities and national infrastructure from likely aero attack, building a civil defense capability, defending our cities and national infrastructure by defending the population, which is the true battleground of modern war. Putting defense industries on a war footing to produce the equipment and ammunition needed. Buying off the shelf quickly to fill the gaps. To name just a few measures. Above all, it needs a de Gaulleesque demand for action this day, instead of a ponderous defense review, which is unlikely to do little but rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. And the prerequisite? Moral courage, exemplary leadership to inform, educate, and not pull punches, and a readiness by NATO populations to make the necessary sacrifices to preserve peace by deterring war. We have to fight a second Cold War to avoid a third World War. If we fail to do this, the costs, in terms of blood and treasure, will be incalculable. And Putin can be defeated. Assad's fall provides a lesson for the West. Assad's exile in Moscow means Putin's days are numbered. The end of Bashar al-Assad's rule in Syria has led to many asking questions about Russia's ability to project power overseas, and what it may mean for the course of the war in Ukraine. While we should be wary of any hasty conclusions, the sudden collapse of Syria's brutal regime is a reminder that any leader can appear to be in power until suddenly they aren't. There can be no doubt that the end of Bashar al-Assad's rule in Syria has weakened Russia's position in the Middle East and dented Moscow's international standing, such as it is. After an early rapprochement with the West, including a 2002 visit to the United Kingdom, Assad had become almost as close an ally for Moscow as his father Hafez was in Greater Soviet's times. In 2015, Russia supplied aero power that helped him turn the tide of the Syrian civil war. And it was Moscow that last week provided refuge for him and his family as rebel forces closed in on the capital. Whatever happens to Russia's 12 military bases in Syria, to Russia's 12 military bases in Syria, Russia's projection of power in the Middle East would seem to be at an end, for the time being at the least. This makes the Russian Empire almost as big a loser in the regional power dynamic as Iran. And this brings us to Iran's dangerous calculus. In his first statement since the ouster of Syria's Bashar al-Assad, a key partner for Iran's regional strategy, the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said his country is powerful and strong and vowed to expand its network of allies. In reality, Iran's room to maneuver is narrowing. Its regional proxies are decimated. A decidedly unfriendly American administration is heading toward the White House, and its population is seething under a struggling economy. Assad's removal comes after a year of political and military reshuffling in the Middle East set in motion by the October 7th attack on Israel. As Iran seeks to simultaneously rebuild its regional influence and create an opening with these United States, the risk of miscalculation is rising. Khamenei has vowed to rebuild the country's alliances in the Levant, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in the Gaza, both of which have been decimated by Israel. Meanwhile, Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, a reformer, has plans to revive negotiations with the American empire over the defunct 2015 nuclear deal. The idea was hatched before the American empire re-elected Donald Trump. Restoring the 2015 agreement to limit Iran's nuclear capabilities, which Trump shredded in his first term, is key to unfettering Iran's oil-rich and industrialized economy from American sanctions. That would require Trump walking back from his promised maximum pressure campaign as well. Khamenei, likely in his final decade of leadership, would need to allow Pezeshkian to work with an administration hated by many hardliners. Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency said last week that Iran abandoned its short-lived pledge to stop enriching uranium to near levels that can be used for a weapon. Tehran is signaling it can ramp up or down its race for a weapon depending on how Washington behaves. Trump has vowed he won't let Iran get nuclear weapons, and his foreign policy appointments are generally hawkish. Where either side draws the line in its posture toward the other remains dangerously unclear. For Russia, however, the impact of Assad's fall may not be limited to its military and political reach abroad. There could be reverberations much closer to home. 12 years ago, the uprisings known as the Arab Spring resonated in Russia in two quite different ways. On the one hand, for all that they failed to install democracy, they showed that the people, especially young people, had the power to resist. On the other, and this was the argument that then prevailed, the turmoil provided a further object lesson in the value of stability, following violent upheavals in Iraq and Libya almost a decade before. This was the argument Vladimir Putin was able to use in the face of street protests against his decision to stand again for the presidency in 2012. 4 years before, he had essentially swapped jobs with his prime minister to comply with the Constitution's term limits. His decision to return to the top job prompted fury, especially among a new post-communist generation of Russians who had hoped for change. Putin returned to the presidency and ran a stable, if increasingly repressive, ship, capitalizing on his successful and largely bloodless annexation of the Crimea from Ukraine in 2014. The victory celebrations in the Kremlin were a sea of glowing faces and shining eyes after what was seen as the humiliation of the Greater Soviet's collapse. National pride was being restored. For many Russians, that may mark the high point of Putin's dictatorship. Those glory days were, nonetheless, short-lived. The fall of Assad and his exile in Moscow have received precious little coverage so far in the Russian media, beyond the stark announcement that he and his family had been granted asylum on humanitarian grounds. This does not mean, however, that developments in Suraya have not been noticed, or that they do not have the potential to have a profoundly destabilizing effect. For the fall of Assad has demonstrated not just the limits of Russian power abroad, but the limits of personal power as well. Assad's authority evaporated in the most spectacular way. The center could not hold in the face of a divided and demoralized population and a military, once loyal, that defected en masse. An armed and well-organized group swept to power, encountering almost no resistance at all. What happens next in Suraya could be very different from today's widespread public rejoicing. But what happens in Russia could also defy predictions. Russia is not a happy country. Polls, to the extent they can be relied upon, suggest half the population wants an end to the war in Ukraine. If Putin gives every appearance of being solidly in control, the lesson from Assad is that any leader can appear to be in power, until suddenly he isn't. Power stems from credibility, and credibility can dissolve in an instant. One of the most striking aspects of the brief Wagner revolt was the lack of resistance, not just on the streets, but from part of the military command, as its tanks processed up the motorway towards Moscow. And while there may be no armed opposition force in Russia, as there was in Suraya, it cannot be ruled out that there are sections of the officer class that are less enamored of current operations than others, or that certain units could lose the will to fight the enemy and gain a following. After all, this is largely how and why Russia ended its war with the Kaiser's Imperial Germany in 1917. To which might be added that abdication, in the manner of Tsar Nicholas II, might be the way Putin decides to go, rather than mounting resistance. The word is that he advised Assad to accept exile, rather than risk the ignominy suffered by Saddam Hussein or Muammar al-Gaddafi by staying on. Nor need the absence of any obvious alternative necessarily be a hindrance. Few imagined that Assad would be toppled in that particular way, or by the particular group that he was. Nor are those who do the toppling necessarily those who will then exercise the power. Whether Putin's days are also numbered, or how his power might end, is pure speculation. But since he started making life difficult for the West, which can be dated perhaps to his 2007 attack on NATO expansion at the Munich Security Conference in the year my legal father was murdered, his eventual demise has been seen by some as a kind of solution. Well, maybe. Or maybe it could make us matters worse. I take no particular side in this argument. My caution is, rather, against expecting that a Russia without Putin would automatically be very different, either better or worse than it is today. The wisdom about nations having permanent interests rather than permanent friends or enemies still applies. The invasion of Ukraine reflected Putin's fears for Russia's security in the event that the Ukraine joined a Western military or defense bloc. This is a perception of Russia's national interest that is likely to live on, even if Putin himself does not. But the fall of the Assad regime in Suraya has led to questions over Russia's ability to sustain its military adventures abroad. Russia had supported Assad militarily for over a decade, building on long-standing ties between Moscow and Damascus. But the rapid advance of anti-government forces this month saw Russia evidently powerless to influence the situation beyond a number of aerostrikes, as always, apparently mostly delivered on civilian targets in support of government forces. That has inevitably led people to draw conclusions about Russia's ability to project power overseas and what it may mean for the course of the war in Ukraine. But hasty comparisons should be avoided. There is a world of difference between a distant operation in support of a friend of Moscow clinging to power and a major war on Russia's own borders for territory which Vladimir Putin has declared should be Moscow's to rule. In previous decades, there used to be a truism among observers of the Russian armed forces that Russia would mount military interventions in places that it could drive to, or ideally, get there by train. The military deployment to Suraya in the previous decade conclusively broke the mold, demonstrating a Russian ability to use aero and sea lift to move into a country distant from Russia's borders in a manner that surprised and impressed analysts at the time. But once Russia got there, its manner of going about its business confirmed that other long-standing realities of dealing with Russia remained unchanged. The embrace of atrocities, and the tactic of destroying the infrastructure that keeps civilians alive, in order to terrorize the populace into submission, continued a pattern set by Moscow over not just decades, but centuries, and provided a grim preview of the horrors that would be inflicted upon Ukrainians today. The fall of Assad is undoubtedly a setback for Russia's ambitions to to protect power in the Middle East. Whether and how Russia's forces in place in the country will need to evacuate is just one of the open questions arising from the change of power in Syria. Another is what the potential impact may be on Russia's extension of its power further afield, particularly its presence across Africa, for which a staging post in Syria was an important logistical enabler. Another potential positive outcome is that other murderous dictators around the world looking for Russian support will understand that support is finite and conditional. That provides an opportunity for Western powers, should they be willing and able to take it, to undermine the willingness of some of the world's most repellent regimes to back Moscow and invite Russian influence to expand into their own countries. But the implications for Russia's ambitions for Europa are more limited. In both nature and purpose, Russian support for Assad was a very different undertaking than its assault on Ukraine. Russian support to Syria was always intended to be a limited footprint, light on ground forces, and to deliver results primarily through the application of aero power and the installation of advisors and special forces. In a way, this reflected the smaller, relatively well-trained and well-equipped army that Russia was trying to develop before 2022. In Ukraine, Russia has by now comprehensively moved away from this model and fallen back on its comfort zone of winning through quantity, not quality, throwing large numbers of troops with limited training forward to soak up bullets and wear Ukrainian forces down through sheer pressure and attrition. In addition, while presence in Syria was an undoubted foreign policy coup d'etat for Moscow, coming as it did on the heels of Russian success in facing down the United States over its own potential intervention there in 2013, this was nevertheless a peripheral interest for the Russian Empire. That's very different from Ukraine, where Putin has staked not only a claim, but Russia's entire economy and future on restoration of the empire. And while the fall of Assad continues a succession of reverses and blows to Russia's prestige, on the heels of Ukraine's incursion into Kursk, and the falling back on North Korean reinforcements to bolster Russian military manpower, none of these presents a serious threat to the power of the Kremlin at home in the way that failure of the war of reconquest of Ukraine would. In other words, while it's true that Syria demonstrates Russia cannot always dictate the outcome of a conflict far from home, that should be of limited comfort to Europe. There, Russia is still working hard to rebuild its land forces alongside aero and naval forces that are largely unscathed by the nature of the fighting in Ukraine. There is a consensus across European defense and intelligence chiefs that Russia's objectives aren't limited to Ukraine. The real lesson to take is from Syria, one reinforced by Ukraine over the last 3 years, is that Russia and its friends are not invincible. and can be halted in their arms and in their aims by determined opposition. That should be yet another, reminder to the United Kingdom and the countries of Western Europe to look to their own defenses if they wish to deny Putin his ambitions. This side of the Atlantic, the conspiracy perverts have a new best friend. 1 in 6 congresswomen targeted by AI-generated sexually explicit deepfakes. Generative AI programs like ChatGPT threaten to revolutionize how disinformation spreads online, as a first-of-its-kind study highlights the stark gender disparity in AI-generated non-consensual intimate images, and puts into focus the evolving risks for women in politics and public life. History itself has long been a theater of war, the past serving as proxy in conflicts over the present. Ron DeSantis warped history by banning books on racism from Florida schools. People remain divided about the right approach to repatriating indigenous objects and remains. The Pentagon Papers were an attempt to twist narratives about the Vietnam War. It has become axiomatic that the Nazis seized power in part by manipulating the past, that they used propaganda about the burning of the Reichstag, the German parliament building, to justify persecuting political rivals and assuming dictatorial authority. That specific example is predictably promulgated by Eric Horvitz, obviously of Jewish descent, and Microsoft's chief scientific officer, and a leading AI researcher, who himself confesses that the apparent AI revolution could not only provide a new weapon to propagandists, as social media did earlier this century, but entirely reshape the historiographic terrain, perhaps laying the groundwork for a modern-day Reichstag fire. The advances in question, including language models such as ChatGPT and image generators such as DAL or -E or DALL-E 2, loosely fall under the umbrella of generative AI. These are not artilects or artificial intellects, but powerful and easy-to-use programs that produce synthetic text, images, video, and audio, all of which can be abused by bad actors to fabricate events, people, speeches, and news reports to sow disinformation. You may have seen one-off examples of this type of media already. Fake videos of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky surrendering to Russia. Mock footage of Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro arguing about the film Ratatouille. As this technology advances, piecemeal fabrications could give way to coordinated campaigns. Not just synthetic media, but entire synthetic histories, as Horvitz called them in a paper published late last year. And a new breed of AI-powered search engines, led by Microsoft and Google, could make such histories easier to find and all but impossible for users to detect. As similar fears about social media, TV and radio proved all too prescient, there is every reason to believe that AI could really be the new variant of disinformation that makes lies about future elections, protests, or mass shootings both more contagious, well, not just contagious, but immunoresistant. Consider, for example, the bird flu outbreak. A political operative or a simple conspiracist could abuse programs similar to ChatGPT and DALL-E 2 to easily generate and publish an enormous number of stories about Chinese, World Health Organizational, or Pentagonalist labs tinkering with the virus, backdate it to various points in the past, and complete with fake leaked documents audio and video recordings, and expert commentary. A synthetic history in which a government weaponized bird flu would be ready to go if avian flu ever began circulating among humans. A propagandist could simply connect the news to their entirely fabricated, but fully formed and seemingly well-documented backstory seeded across the internet, spreading a fiction that could consume this nation's politics and public health response. The power of AI-generated histories lies in, as Horvitz himself admits in his own words, deepfakes on a timeline intermixed with real events to build a story. It's also possible that synthetic histories will change the kind, but not the severity, of the already rampant disinformation online. People are happy to believe the bogus stories they see on Facebook, Rumble, Truth Social, YouTube, wherever. Before the web, propaganda and lies about foreigners, wartime enemies, aliens, and Bigfoot abounded. And where synthetic media or deepfakes are concerned, existing research proves that they offer surprisingly little benefit compared with similar manipulations, such as mislabeling footage or writing fake news reports. You see, you don't need advanced technology for people to believe a conspiracy theory. Still, Horvitz concludes, we are at a precipice. The speed at which AI can generate high-quality disinformation will be overwhelming. Automated disinformation, produced at a heightened pace and scale, could enable what he calls adversarial generative explanations, or AGEs, AGEs, in a parallel of sorts to the targeted content you're served on social media, which is tested and optimized according to what people engage with. Propagandists could run small tests to determine which parts of an invented narrative are more or less convincing, and abuse that feedback along with social psychology research to iteratively improve that synthetic history. Exempli gratiae, a program could revise and modulate a fabricated expert's credentials and quotes to land with certain demographics. Language models like ChatGPT, as well, threaten to drown the internet in similarly conspiratorial and tailored Potemkin text. Not targeted advertising, but targeted conspiracies. Big Tech's plan to replace traditional internet search with chatbots could increase this risk substantially. The AI language models being integrated into Bing and Google are notoriously terrible at fact-checking and prone to falsities, which perhaps makes them susceptible to spreading fake histories. Although many of the early versions of chatbot-based search give Wikipedia-style responses with footnotes, the whole point of a synthetic history is to provide an alternative and convincing set of sources. And the entire premise of chatbots is convenience, for people to trust them without checking. If this disinformation doomsday sounds familiar, that's because it is. Joseph Uscinski, a political scientist at the University of Miami who studies conspiracy theories, has already gone on record to say, and here I quote his T, "The claim about AI technology is the same claim that people were making yesterday about the internet. Oh my God, lies travel faster and faster than ever, and everyone's going to believe everything they see." But he himself claims to have found no evidence that beliefs in conspiracy theories have increased alongside social media use, or even throughout the coronavirus pandemic, as the research into common narratives such as echo chambers is also shaky. Uscinski insists that people buy into alternative histories not because new technologies make them more convincing, but for the same reason they believe anything else. Maybe the conspiracy confirms their existing beliefs, matches their political persuasion, or comes from a source they trust. He referenced climate change as an example. People who believe in anthropogenic warming, for the most part, have, in his words, not investigated the data themselves. All they're doing is listening to their trusted sources, which is exactly what the climate change deniers are doing too. It's the same exact mechanism. It's just, in this case, the Republican elites happen to have it wrong. Of course, social media did change how people produce, spread, and consume information. Generative AI could do the same, but with new stakes. The aforecited Horvitz so says that, in the past, people would try things out by intuition, but the idea of iterating faster, with more surgical precision on manipulating minds, is a new thing. The fidelity of the content, the ease with which it can be generated, the ease with which you can post multiple events onto timelines, all are substantive reasons to worry. Already, in the lead-up to the 2020 election, Donald Trump planted doubts about voting fraud that bolstered the Stop the Steal campaign once he lost. During election years, like-minded political operatives could abuse AI to create fake personas and election officials, fabricate videos of vote machine manipulation and ballot stuffing, and write false news stories, all of which could come together into an airtight synthetic history in which the election was stolen. Deepfake campaigns they'll send us further into what Horvitz himself predicts will be a post-epistemic world where you don't know what's real or fake. A business person accused of wrongdoing could call incriminating evidence AI-generated. A politician could plant documented but entirely false character assassinations of rivals. Or perhaps, in the same way Truth Social and Rumble provide conservative alternatives to Twitter and YouTube, a far-right alternative to AI-powered research trained on a wealth of conspiracies and synthetic histories will ascend in response to fears about Google, Bing, and woke GPT being too progressive. Per René DiResta, the research manageress of the Stanford Internet Observatory, who recently wrote a paper on language models and disinformation, there's nothing in my mind that would stop that from happening in search capacity. It's going to be seen as a fantastic market opportunity for somebody. Right-wing GPT and a conservative Christian AI are already under discussion, and Elon Musk is building a Russo-radicalized rival to OpenAI. Preparing for such deepfake campaigns will require a variety of strategies, including media literacy efforts, enhanced detection methods, and regulation. Most promising might be creating a standard to establish the provenance of any piece of media, a log of where a photo was taken, and all the ways it has been edited attached to the file as metadata, like a chain of custody for forensic evidence, which Adobe, Microsoft, and several other companies are working on. But people would still need to understand and trust that log. Rachel Kwong, a media studies professores at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, advises that you have this moment of both proliferation of content and muddiness about how things are coming to be. Provenance, detection, or other debunking methods might still rely largely on people listening to experts, whether it be journalists, government officials, or AI chatbots, who tell them what is and isn't legitimate. And even with such silicon chains of custody, simpler forms of lying, over cable news, on the floor of Congress, in print will continue. Framing technology as the driving force behind disinformation and conspiracy implies that technology is a sufficient or at least necessary solution. But emphasizing AI could be a mistake. Alice Merwick, a media studies professoress at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, suggests that if we're primarily worried that, in her own words, someone's going to deepfake Joe Biden, saying that he is a pedophile, then we're ignoring the reason why a piece of information like that would be resonant. And to argue that new technologies, whether social media or AI, are primarily or solely responsible for bending the truth risks reifying the power of big tech's advertisements, algorithms, and feeds to determine our thoughts and feelings. As the reporter Joseph Bernstein has writ, and here I read therefrom, it is a model of cause and effect in which the information circulated by a few corporations has the total power to justify the beliefs and behaviors of the demos. In a way, this world is a kind of comfort, easy to explain, easy to tweak, and easy to sell. The messier story might contend with how humans, and maybe machines, are not always very rational, with what might need to be done for writing history to no longer be a war. The historian Gilles Lepour, the historianess, has alleged that the footnote saved Wikipedia, suggesting that transparent sourcing helped that website become, or rather at least appear to be, a premier source for fairly reliable information, which, as I have deconstructed, it most certainly is not. Well, now the footnote, that impulse and impetus to verify, is about to sink the internet, if it has not done so already. Because according to a new study that spotlights the stark gender disparity in this technology and the evolving risks for women's participation in politics and other forms of civic engagement, more than 12 members of Congress have been the victims of sexually explicit deepfakes, and an overwhelming majority of those impacted are women. The ASP, the ASP, American Sunlight Project, a think tank that researches disinformation and advocates for policies that promote democracy, released findings on Wednesday, this midweek last, that identified more than 35,000 mentions of NCII, an acronym for non-consensual intimate imagery, depicting 26 members of Congress, a quarter of 100 women, and only a single man, that were found recently on deepfake websites. Most of the imagery was quickly removed as researchers shared their findings with impacted members of Congress. Non-consensual intimate imagery, also known colloquially as deepfake porn, though advocates prefer the former, can be created through generative AI or by overlaying headshots onto media of adult performers. There is currently limited policy to restrict its creation and spread. ASP shared the first of its kind findings by explaining that the group collected data in part by developing a custom search engine to find members of the 118th Congress by first and last name, and abbreviations or nicknames, on 11 well-known deepfake sites. Neither party affiliation nor geographic location had an impact on the likelihood of being targeted for abuse, though younger members were more likely to be victimized. The largest factor was gender, with women members of Congress being 70 times more likely than men to be targeted. ASP, or ASP, did not release the names of the lawmakers who were targeted in the imagery, but it's pretty much any female member of Congress, in order to avoid encouraging searches. They did contact the offices of everyone impacted to alert them and offer resources on online harms and mental health support. Authors of the study note that in the the immediate aftermath, all too intimate for the victims, imagery targeting most of the members was entirely or almost entirely removed from the sites, a fact they're unable to explain. Researchers have noted that such removals do not prevent material from being shared or uploaded again. In some cases involving lawmakers, search result pages remained indexed on Google despite the content being largely or entirely removed. You see, somehow the enemy knew as soon as they had found it. Now, according to the study I'm sourcing, and here I read therefrom, the removal may be coincidental. Regardless of what exactly led to removal of this content, whether cease and desist letters, claims of copyright infringement, or other contact with the sites hosting deepfake abuse, it highlights a large disparity of privilege. People, particularly women, who lack the resources afforded to members of Congress, would be highly unlikely to achieve this rapid response from the creators and distributors of AI-generated NCII if they initiated a takedown request themselves. According to this study's initial findings, nearly 16% of all women who currently serve in Congress, or about 1 in 6 congresswomen, are the victims of AI-generated non-consensual intimate imagery. Image-based sexual abuse can have devastating mental health effects on victims who include everyday people who are not involved in politics, including children. In the past year, there have been reports of high school girls being targeted for image-based sexual abuse in states like my own California, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. School officials have had varying degrees of response, though the FBI has also issued a new warning that sharing such imagery of minors is illegal. Note that these 3 states, mine is the tech state, New Jersey is the drone state, and Pennsylvania is where they're keeping Luigi Magnoni. The full impact of deepfakes on society is still coming into focus, but research already proves that 41% of women between the ages of 18 and 29 self-censor to avoid online harassment. There is no federal law that establishes criminal or civil penalties for someone who generates and distributes AI-generated non-consensual intimate imagery. About a dozen states have enacted laws in recent years, though most include civil penalties, not criminal ones. AI-generated non-consensual intimate imagery also opens up threats to national security by creating conditions for blackmail and geopolitical concessions. That could have ripple effects on policymakers irrespective of whether they're directly the target of the imagery. Image-based sexual abuse is a unique risk for women running for office. Susanna Gibson narrowly lost her competitive legislative race after a Republican operative shared non-consensual recordings of sexually explicit live streams featuring the Virginia Democrat and her husband with the Washington Post. In the months after her loss, Gibson told the 19th she heard from young women discouraged from running for office out of fear of intimate images being abused to harass them. Gibson has since started a nonprofit dedicated to fighting image-based sexual abuse and an accompanying political action committee to support women candidates against violations of intimate privacy. Per Sophie Maddox, research directress at the Center for Media at Risk at the University of Pennsylvania, has studied how women who speak out in public are more likely to experience digital sexual violence. To quote a she ad linctem verbatim, that is a hugely powerful threat to democracy and free speech. If we have almost half of the population silencing themselves because they're scared of the harassment they could experience, we have this much longer woman should be seen and not heard pattern that makes me think about Mary Beard's writing and research on this idea that womanhood is antithetical to public speech. So when women speak publicly, it's almost like, okay, time to shame them, time to strip them, time to get them back in the house, time to shame them into silence. And that silencing and that shaming motivation, we have to understand that in order to understand how this harm is manifesting as it relates to Congresswomen. So the ASP is encouraging Congress to pass federal legislation to disrupt explicit forged images and non-consensual edicts, or the Defiance Act. It's an acronym, DEFIANCE, acronymous for Disrupt Explicit Forged Images and Non-Consensual Edits Act of 2024. Also known by its acronym, the Defiance Act. All uppercase letters, of course, would allow people to sue anyone who creates, shares, or receives such imagery. The Take It Down Act would include criminal liability for such activity and require tech companies to take down deepfakes. Both bills have passed the Senate with bipartisan support, but have to navigate concerns around free speech and harm definitions, which are typical hurdles to tech policy in the House. In the absence of congressional action, the White House has collaborated with the private sector to conceive creative solutions to curb image-based sexual abuse. But critics aren't optimistic about big tech's ability to regulate itself, given the history of harm caused by its very own platforms. Nina Yankovic, an online disinformation and harassment expertise who founded the American Sunlight Project, the ASP, the ASP, who is an authoress on the study that I'm sourcing, has been the target of online harassment and threats for her domestic and international work dismantling disinformation. She has also spoken publicly about being the victim of deepfake abuse, a fact she only found out about through a Google alert in 2023. To quote a she at length and verbatim, "You can be made to appear in these compromised, intimate situations without your consent, and those videos, even if you were to say, pursue a copyright claim against the original poster, as in my case, they proliferate around the internet without your control and without some sort of consequence for the people who are amplifying or creating deepfake porn. That continues to be a risk for anybody who is in the public eye, who is participating in public discourse, but in particular for women and for women of color. We need to kind of reckon with this new environment and the fact that the internet has opened up so many of these harms that are disproportionately targeting women and marginalized communities. My hope here is that the members are pushed into action when they recognize not only that it's affecting American women, but it's affecting them. It's affecting their own colleagues. And this is happening simply because they are in the public eye. It would be a dereliction of duty for Congress to let this session lapse without passing at least one of these bills. It is one of the ways that the harm of artificial intelligence is actually being felt by real Americans right now. It's not a future harm. It's the signal. It's not something that we have to imagine. It is so easy for perpetrators to create this content. And the signal is not just to the individual woman being targeted. It's to women everywhere, saying, if you take this step, if you raise your voice, this is a consequence that you might have to deal with. Now, if you yourself have been a victim of image-based sexual abuse, the Cyber Civil Rights Initiative, at the link that I will enter into the chat, maintains a list of legal resources. Because here's what happens when the world's second richest man, after the Putin who puppeteers him, buys our presidency. Now, first the link for you to work with. And here I will provide as such. And the first thing I'll have to do is open the window where I can provide it. And here we are. Let me know if that link works for you. And we're going to give myself a moment here to prepare myself for the further deep dive. Because when I go into Elon Musk, we're entering a territory where it's like diving into the sewer of shit that I'm struggling against on your behalf. A job for which I am not paid. Not to be considered as parallel or analogous to those people who turn in others for a reward because it never works for them. But in a sense, the situation has its similarities. So, to put context, as always, historical context, into what I'm trying to convey as a message, understand that in 1935, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt created Social Security, an insurance contract between Americans and the federal government that pays out on certain life events. As a financial safety net, Social Security protects Americans from what Roosevelt called the hazards and vicissitudes of life. Roosevelt's plan has been vital to the American people and has delivered payments on time for generations. Today, 180 million employees are paying in, and 87 million people are receiving retirement and disability benefits under